I was reborn back in 1983, lying in a hospital bed, miscarrying Gu Zhan's child. It's not easy for my sister-in-law. Being a widow with a child, you should be more considerate. He handed me a cup of warm brown sugar water, steam still rising from it. In my past life, I endured everything in silence, only to be pushed off the building by his dear sister-in-law in the end. This time, I pulled out the 4-drip and slammed the divorce papers onto his military medal. Let's end this. Consider the child my way of repaying your family's debt. The thick, metallic taste of blood still lingered in my throat, while a chilling despair clung to every fiber of my consciousness like a stubborn parasite. The howling wind roared in my ears, accompanied by the sickening, bone-crunching thud of my body hitting the cold, hard concrete. Arg! A sharp, piercing scream cut through the chaos, violently yanking me back to the world of the living. My eyelids felt like lead as I struggled to pry them open just a slit. My vision was blurry, overwhelmed by a harsh, blinding white light. The overpowering stench of disinfectant invaded my nostrils, so strong it made me nauseous. Deep within, a violent, wrenching pain, as if my insides were being torn apart, savagely clawed at my nerves. It wasn't the cold, hard impact of a fall, it was a hospital delivery bed. Awake, a woman's voice, devoid of warmth, sounded above me. A masked nurse was adjusting the 4-drip with efficient, almost indifferent movements. The anesthesia's worn off. Pain is normal. Just bear with it. A miscarriage still requires postpartum care. Don't take it lightly. She glanced at me with empty eyes, as if stating the most mundane fact. Miscarriage. Those 2 words seared into my heart like a red-hot iron. The pain surged with brutal clarity, merging with the memory of being pushed from a height in my past life. That bone-shattering, icy agony now churning violently within me. My stomach convulsed, and I twisted toward the chipped white enamel basin by the bed, retching dryly until only bitter, acidic bile came up. Just then, the pale green wooden door of the hospital room swung open quietly. A tall, straight-backed figure blocked the light from the doorway, bringing in a chill from outside. His dark green military uniform was impeccably pressed, and the battalion commander's insignia on his epaulette gleamed with a stern, metallic sheen under the fluorescent lights. It was Gu Zhan. He held a similarly chipped white enamel mug, from which steam rose, softening the sharp lines of his jaw. His footsteps were light as he approached the bed, placing the mug on the nightstand with a faint clink. Good, you're awake. His voice was deep, carrying a soldier's steadiness, yet tinged with a barely perceptible weariness. He leaned down as if to reach for my forehead. I instinctively flinched backward, my spine hitting the cold iron bed rail with a dull thud. The movement tugged at the wound below, sending a sharp pain that made me gasp, beads of cold sweat forming on my forehead. Gu Zhan's hand froze mid-air, his dark, sword-like brows furrowing almost imperceptibly. He withdrew his hand, his gaze sweeping over my pale, sweat-beaded face before settling on the steaming cup of brown sugar water. Have something warm, he said, picking up the enamel mug and offering it to me. His tone softened but carried an undeniable, almost commanding reassurance. Warm yourself up. The reddish-brown liquid sloshed inside the white enamel, giving off a cloyingly sweet smell. My gaze shifted past that nauseatingly sweet drink, locking firmly onto Gu Zhan's face. That face, handsome, resolute, had once been the light of my youth, but now, every sharp angle seemed to reflect the foolishness and blood-soaked tears of my past life. It was his repeated understanding, his ever-struggling widowed sister-in-law Lu Shouyun, that had ultimately pushed me into the abyss. In my past life, right on this very hospital bed, I endured heart-wrenching pain and the despair of losing my child as I drank that cup of sugary water he handed me. Then I listened as he spoke those solemn, weighty words. Wan. Gu Zhan's voice rang out just as expected, low, patient in that way he always tried to reason with me. Each word felt like a poison-tipped ice needle, piercing straight into my already battered heart. I know you're hurting. I'm in pain too, after losing the baby. But Sister Shouyun, she's a widow with a child. It's only been a few months since Jianmin passed. She was just flustered today, lost her balance, and bumped into you. His voice trailed off, as if carefully weighing his words. His gaze bore into me with an unspoken pressure to consider the bigger picture. She's a woman raising a child all by herself. It's not easy. You should try to be more understanding. Don't make a scene. Alright, understanding. Make a scene. That memory of Lu Shouyun pushing me down the stairs in my past life, her face twisted with jealousy, Gu Zhan's unwavering belief in her tearful lies, and now, this cup of cloyingly sweet brown sugar water and his pity for the struggling Lu Shouyun. Boom. The last thread of sanity in my mind snapped instantly under the overwhelming hatred and icy despair. All pretense, all endurance, all the accumulated grievances and resentments from past lives ignited at this moment. blazing into an all-consuming inferno. Understanding. I jerked my head up, my voice rasping like sandpaper yet sharp as ice, piercing straight at Gu Zhan. Battalion Commander Gu, what exactly should I understand? That she accidentally caused me to lose my 3-month-old child? Or that being a widow with children gives her the right to steal my man and take over my home? My voice suddenly rose sharply, like a chipped blade scraping against the eerie silence of the hospital ward, producing a grating noise. The patient and family in the next bed held their breath in shock, and even the nurses stopped what they were doing, staring at me in astonishment. Gu Zhan's face darkened abruptly, as if frosted over. He clearly hadn't anticipated that I, usually docile and even somewhat timid, would suddenly erupt. Even less did he expect me to tear off that fig leaf so bluntly and sharply. His jaw tightened, his eyes instantly turning sharp and icy, carrying a soldier's authoritative pressure. Lin Wan, watch your language. What nonsense about stealing a man and taking over a home? How dare you spout such rubbish? Lu Xiaoyun and I are completely innocent. Completely innocent. I let out a broken laugh as if hearing the most absurd joke in the world, tears uncontrollably welling up and mixing with cold sweat, streaming down my face in a wretched mess. If Lu Xiaoyun were truly innocent, she wouldn't be wandering around the living room in your shirt in the middle of the night. She wouldn't have deliberately knocked over the chicken soup I'd simmered all afternoon to scald herself, only to turn around and cry to you while clutching Gu Jianmen's portrait. She wouldn't have whispered in your ear every day during my pregnancy about how pitiful Jijun is without his father and how cruel I, this stepmother, am. I spat out the words in one breath, each syllable dripping with bloody accusations and the venom of a past life. The hospital room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop, with only my ragged, heavy panting breaking the silence. Gu Zhan's face turned ashen, his eyes churning with shock, offended fury, and a trace of barely perceptible embarrassment. He took a sudden step forward, his tall frame radiating intense pressure, his voice thick with thunderous rage. Lin Wan, have you lost your mind? Shut your mouth. How dare you spew such wild accusations? Do you have any idea? I don't know, I snapped, cutting him off with a voice like poisoned steel, my gaze meeting his furious eyes without flinching. All I know is my child is gone, killed by that precious sister-in-law of yours you're always defending. And you, as his father, dare tell me to show her understanding. Gu Zhan, where is your heart? Did a dog eat it, or has it been dissolved by Lu Xiaoyun's crocodile tears? You, Gu Zhan trembled with rage at my blunt address and piercing accusations, veins bulging at his temples. His hand shot up as if to silence my hysterics. The moment his palm rose, the last trace of warmth vanished from my eyes. Enough. Every second spent with this scum was an insult to life itself. All my fury, accusations, and bitterness collapsed into a void of icy silence under the weight of pure hatred. Without even glancing at him, my right hand flashed up, seizing the 4-tube on my left hand. Without hesitation, I dug my nails into my flesh and yanked with all my strength. Schlick, the needle tore out of the blue vein with a trail of tiny blood droplets. A distinct puncture mark appeared on my hand, from which crimson beads welled up, snaking down my pale wrist to stain the white sheets like a glaring blood-red blossom. The sharp pain shot through me, yet it was nothing compared to the agony tearing through my heart. Gu Zhan's pupils contracted sharply at my sudden move, his raised hand freezing mid-air. I gave him no time to react. With my left hand, I threw aside the thin, disinfectant-scented blanket covering me, and the icy air instantly enveloped my body clad only in a flimsy hospital gown. A searing pain, like a steel blade twisting in my lower abdomen, made my legs tremble so badly they could barely support me. Gritting my teeth, I tasted the metallic tang of blood on my tongue. Driven by overwhelming hatred, I forced myself off the cold metal bed. My feet hit the frigid terrazzo floor, a bone-chilling cold shooting straight up from my soles to the crown of my head. My body swayed uncontrollably. Lin Wan, what are you doing? Gu Zhan finally snapped out of it, growling as he reached out to steady me. Get away from me, I snarled, my voice hoarse and icy as I violently knocked his hand aside with such force that I staggered myself. My eyes were locked on the left breast pocket of his military uniform, where his treasured hero brand fountain pen was clipped. It was a gift from his old regiment commander after he distinguished himself. Without a moment's hesitation, I thrust out my blood-stained, trembling right hand and lunged with all my might toward that pocket. Caught completely off guard by my sudden assault, Gu Zhan was powerless to stop me as I seized the cap of that fountain pen. You, his face instantly paled as he instinctively moved to shield himself. Too late. With a sharp tug and the faint sound of tearing fabric, I yanked the heavy hero brand fountain pen right out of his pocket. Clutched in my other hand was a neatly folded, slightly worn piece of paper. The divorce petition I had painstakingly written by the dim kerosene lamp 2 nights ago, enduring the dull ache in my abdomen. Every single character on that page was soaked with the blood and tears of my past life. Gu Zhan felt a sudden chill on his chest. Glancing down at the torn slit in his military uniform pocket, he looked up in a mix of shock and fury. Lin Wan, have you lost your mind? Give me back that pen. I completely ignored his furious roar. My body ached to the point of near convulsion, the cold sweat soaking through the hospital gown on my back. I bit down hard on my lower lip, the metallic taste of blood flooding my mouth. Relying on that brief clarity brought by the blood's iron scent, I mustered every ounce of strength to stand firm. Then, under Gu Zhan's shocked fury and the stunned gaze from the neighboring hospital bed, I raised my blood-stained hand clutching the pen and divorce papers high. With the last vestiges of my strength, fueled by the bone-deep hatred from my past life and the icy resolve of this one, I slammed it hard against the star insignia on Gu Zhan's shoulder, the symbol of his battalion commander's honor. Crack, a sharp yet dull impact echoed through the deathly silent ward. The cold metal insignia dug painfully into my palm. The hard cap of the hero pen, separated only by the thin divorce paper, struck the gleaming star with brutal force. Gu Zhan's tall frame staggered half a step backward from the sudden, powerful blow. All rage on his face froze into blank astonishment as he stared at me in disbelief, as if seeing this pale, frail woman for the first time. Gasping for breath, waves of agony from my lower abdomen made my vision blur, but I straightened my spine, though it trembled with pain, and met his shocked gaze with expressionless, ice-cold stillness. My lips quivered from blood loss and pain. Yet my voice emerged clear and measured, each word striking like an ice-forged nail. Gu Zhan, I want a divorce. I pressed the crumpled divorce papers, still stained with blood from my palm, hard against his cold epaulets as if trying to drive them into his very bones. This child, my gaze swept over my flat yet still aching abdomen, where a tiny life had once grown, now leaving only a cold void and bitter hatred. My voice suddenly sharpened with almost cruel intensity and mocking relief. Consider it my way of repaying your family's debt. As the last word left my lips, I snatched my hand back, clutching the cold hero fountain pen so tightly my knuckles turned white. Without another glance at Gu Zhan's face, a twisted mask of shock, fury, and bewildered confusion, I turned and braced myself against the icy wall. Step by painful step, I dragged myself toward the hospital room door, my body screaming in agony but my resolve ironclad. The thin hospital gown clung to my sweat-drenched back, outlining my sharp shoulder blades like the broken wings of a butterfly. Behind me, dead silence reigned, broken only by my ragged, suppressed breaths and the soft shuffle of slippers against the floor. Gu Zhan stood frozen, the torn fabric of his military uniform pocket dangling limply. The star insignia on his epaulette seemed to bear the faint imprint of paper and a stark, bloody smudge. His eyes dropped to the crumpled document forcibly wedged into the seam of that epaulette, the words "divorce petition" blazing up at him like a red-hot brand. He jerked his head up, his gaze locking onto the frail figure shuffling painfully toward the door. A wave of furious indignation, and something else, something raw and panicked, swept through him. How dare she be this final? This had to be rage talking. A hysterical outburst after losing their child, Lin Wan. He roared, like an enraged lion, in one swift stride. His large hand closed around my arm with brutal, unyielding force, a vice clamping down on my slender limb, threatening to shatter bone. That familiar, domineering strength, the same that always demanded compliance, wrenched me backward. Enough of this nonsense. His voice, thick with suppressed fury, exploded next to my ear. His hot breath hit my neck, heavy with the scent of gunpowder and tobacco. Get back to bed, divorce. Do you even hear the madness you're spewing? The searing pain in my arm twisted together with the cramping in my lower abdomen, and my vision swam black at the edges. Memories of all those times he'd soothed me, all those demands to be understanding, rose like a tidal wave of humiliation, culminating in that endless, freezing cold of my fall. Hate, volcanic, all-consuming hate erupted, drowning every physical agony in its path. Let go. The words hissed through my clenched teeth, my voice hoarse and icy, carrying the ferocity of a dying beast. I didn't look back, just struggled violently, throwing all my strength into breaking free from his grip. Gu Zhan, you son of a bitch, let her go. A thunderous roar exploded from the hospital room doorway. A man built like a fortress, wearing a faded work uniform, charged in like an enraged bull, his eyes bloodshot. It was Lin Daong, my own brother. He'd just gotten off the night shift at the factory and rushed over after a neighbor's frantic call, only to be met with this gut-wrenching sight the moment he entered. His sister, who had just lost her child, being gripped like a helpless chick by that high and mighty battalion commander brother-in-law of his, her face deathly pale and swaying unsteadily. Lin Daiyong's roar was like a bolt from the blue, making the entire ward reverberate. Without wasting a single word, he closed the distance in 2 strides, his large, fan-like hand whistling through the air as he threw a furious punch straight at the arm Gu Zhan was using to restrain me. His move was swift and brutal, fueled by the raw, desperate protectiveness unique to a blue-collar worker defending his own. Thud, the dull sound of impact echoed. Gu Zhan, a soldier, reacted with lightning speed. The instant Lin Daiyong's fist connected, he instinctively released his grip on me, blocking and deflecting most of the force with a swift arm movement. But Lin Daiyong's rage-fueled blow was too powerful. Even with a hasty block, the impact sent a numbing shock through Gu Zhan's arm, making his tall frame stagger backward. Seizing that split-second opportunity, I slipped free like a slick fish, breaking the last of my restraints before my body went completely limp, losing all balance as I crumpled backward. 1-1. Lin Daiyong moved with lightning reflexes, not bothering with Gu Zhan any longer as he lunged forward and caught me firmly against his broad, solid chest and strong arms. The familiar scent of machine oil and sweat enveloped me. It was the smell of my big brother. In my past life, when Lu Shouyun had driven me to the brink, it was Big Brother who secretly slipped me the food coupons and a few dollars he'd saved up, telling me to run, but I never made it out. What happened to Big Brother after that? I never found out. An overwhelming wave of sorrow and the grievance of having narrowly escaped death surged up, stinging my nose and blurring my vision. I clutched desperately at the rough fabric of my brother's work shirt, as if grabbing onto my last lifeline, a choked, broken sob escaping my throat. Don't be afraid, I'm here now. Lin Daiyong held me close, feeling the violent tremors racking his sister's frail body and hearing her stifled sobs. His heart felt like it was shattering. He jerked his head up, his bloodshot eyes burning like red-hot daggers as they fixed fiercely on Gu Zhan, who stood a few steps away with a face like thunder. His voice was hoarse and distorted with rage. Gu, are you even human? My sister just went through hell. She lost the baby. Instead of protecting her, you're here laying hands on her. Is that what those medals of yours are for? Bullying the women in your own home? Gu Zhan's face was dark enough to drip water. He rubbed his arm, sore from where Lin Daiyong had struck him, the star insignia on his epaulets gleaming coldly under the light. He looked at his wife, trembling in Lin Daiyong's arms yet with eyes like ice, then at this brother-in-law who was guarding his sister like an enraged lion. A suffocating sense of frustration and pent-up fury churned violently in his chest. I didn't lay a hand on her. Gu Zhan's voice was tight, carrying a soldier's sternness and a trace of aggrieved irritation. She pulled out her fore and tried to run. Just what? Lin Daiyong completely ignored his explanations, standing before me like an impenetrable wall, his eyes blazing with fury. Just holding her back. Bullshit. Battalion Commander Gu, look at my sister's wrist, look at the blood on her hand, look at her pale face. He grew angrier with each word, his chest heaving violently. What did my sister marry you for? For your high rank, for your generous allowance. She's been slaving day and night taking care of your household, serving your poor, unfortunate widowed sister-in-law. Now she's lost the baby, nearly lost her life, and you're here telling her to be considerate of others. Considerate my ass, Gu Zhan. Has your conscience been eaten by dogs? Lin Daiyong's roars came like rapid gunfire, each word striking Gu Zhan's face and piercing the hearts of everyone in the ward. The patients and their families in neighboring beds looked at Gu Zhan with completely changed expressions, their eyes filled with contempt. Gu Zhan's face flushed and paled alternately under the verbal assault, the veins at his temples throbbing visibly. He clenched his fists, his military pride making it unbearable to endure such public accusation, especially the charge of mistreating his wife. He wanted to refute, to say he had never mistreated Lin Wan, that he had given her a comfortable life. He just hoped for family harmony, hoped she could understand Sister Shouyun's difficulties. But when his gaze met the icy, hollow eyes filled with intense hatred and alienation in Lin Daiyong's arms, my eyes, all his words of defense stuck in his throat. Those eyes were like two bottomless, freezing pools, swirling with emotions completely foreign to him, sending an inexplicable chill shooting through his heart. Just then, a deliberately hushed, tearful female voice sounded at the ward doorway, carrying just the right amount of fragility and alarm. Zhanzi, Wanmei, what's going on here? I heard Wanmei woke up, so I specially made some millet porridge and brought it over. It's Lu Shouyun. She was wearing a slightly worn floral-patterned cotton jacket, her hair neatly combed, with just the right amount of worry and pallor on her face, clutching an aluminum lunchbox. She stood timidly at the doorway, her eyes swept across the tense atmosphere in the hospital room before finally settling on Gu Zhan. Her eyes instantly reddened as she spoke in a tearful voice. Zhanzi, are you alright? It's all my fault, I shouldn't have. If I hadn't lost my balance this morning, none of this would have happened, sis, Gu Zhan exclaimed. As if he had found his anchor or was desperate to escape the awkward situation, he immediately cut off Lu Xiuyun's self-blame. His voice softening unconsciously, it's not your fault, it was an accident. He took a step forward as if to take the lunchbox from her hands. Heartless, I, who had been silently curled up in my elder brother's embrace, suddenly lifted my head. My voice was soft, even somewhat weak, yet it pierced through the false warmth in the hospital room like an ice-cold needle. Instantly, all eyes focused on me. I stared at Lu Xiuyun's face, which was full of innocence and self-reproach. And at the fleeting glint of triumph and calculation deep in her eyes, in my past life, it was this very face, always fragile and helpless in front of Gu Zhan, yet venomous as a serpent when facing me. It was she who pushed me off the rooftop with her own hands. A cold hatred, like a poisonous vine, instantly coiled around my heart, choking me until I could barely breathe. Lu Xiuyun, I said, looking at her as the corner of my mouth slowly curled into an icy smile. There was not a trace of warmth in that expression, only bone-chilling mockery and cold insight. Behind the portrait frame of your late husband, Gu Jianmin, that bundle of grain coupons tied with a red string, along with the 5 yuan, that was the allowance Gu Zhan sent last month for me to recuperate, wasn't it? My words were not loud, but they struck Lu Xiuyun like a thunderbolt out of the blue. The worry and pallor on her face vanished in an instant, replaced by an ashen, deathly white. Her hand, holding the lunchbox, trembled violently. The aluminum container clattered to the ground, spilling scalding millet porridge that splashed onto her feet, like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. She shrieked, "You're lying, you're slandering me. I didn't do it, Zhan, she's framing me." Her reaction was far too intense and abnormal, instantly betraying her guilty conscience. Gu Zhan's outstretched hand froze midair as he reached for the lunchbox. He whipped his head around, staring in shock at Lu Xiuyun's hysterical scream, then turned to me with disbelief. Ration coupons, allowances, the money and coupons he sent home every month. Lin Wan had never once complained about them being insufficient. Could it be? An utterly absurd and chilling thought involuntarily surfaced in his mind. Am I making baseless accusations? Why don't we just search and find out? I leaned against my brother's chest, my voice weak but my gaze sharp as a dagger, fixed on Lu Xiuyun's fear-contorted face. At the very bottom of the con cabinet in your bedroom, in that biscuit tin with the red paper pasted on it, besides the ration coupons, there's also a Plum Blossom brand watch. That was my mother's dowry gift to me. Lu Xiuyun, dare you let someone go and check? Boom. Lu Xiuyun seemed to have all the strength drained from her body. Her legs gave way, and she collapsed into the spilled porridge on the floor, trembling uncontrollably like a sieve. Her lips quivered, unable to form a single word. Her terrified, desperate eyes completely gave her away. With ironclad evidence laid bare, the hospital room fell into a dead silence, broken only by Lu Xiuyun's ragged, despairing breaths. Gu Zhan stood frozen like a petrified statue, rooted to the spot. He looked at the pale, crumpled figure of Lu Xiuyun on the ground, then at his wife in her brother's arms, weak and cold-eyed, yet seeming to see right through everything. The epaulets on his chest felt cold and hard. The divorce report he unconsciously clutched in his hand dug into his palm with its sharp edges. All the understanding, all the hardships, at this moment, were torn apart, bleeding and raw, revealing the most vile and ugly scheming beneath. Lin Daong held me tighter, glaring at the collapsed Lu Xiuyun and the rigid Gu Zhan before letting out a heavy, contemptuous snarl through gritted teeth. "Pa, what a disgusting bunch." Without another glance at them, he carefully supported me as if guarding a fragile treasure, his voice softening immensely. "Wan, big brother will take you away. We're not staying in this damned place any longer." I nodded weakly, burying my face in my elder brother's shoulder that smelled of engine oil, and closed my eyes in exhaustion. My body ached with numbness, yet my heart was gripped by a chilling calm. Gu Zhan stood rooted to the spot, watching helplessly as Lin Daong half-supported, half-carried me, step by step, trudging with difficulty yet unwavering determination out of the hospital ward. That frail silhouette vanished into the light and shadow at the doorway, like a resolute dividing line. He looked down and opened his palm, revealing the crumpled divorce report stained with a dull red, and a cold, metallic star insignia fastener that still held the lingering warmth from her fingertips. That fierce, desperate slap had actually knocked it loose. The icy metal pressed against his palm with a bone-chilling cold. Outside the window, it was late autumn of 1983, the lead gray sky hanging heavily over the city. Lin Daong pedaled his clattering bicycle, the kind that rattled everywhere except the bell, with me perched carefully on the back, cushioned by the thick, sweat-stained cotton jacket he'd stubbornly taken off. We bumped along the potholed factory road, bypassing the nauseating military family compound that reeked of Lu Shouyun's presence, heading straight instead for the dilapidated residential area behind the cotton mill. This was where Lin Daong lived, a mere 10-square-meter red brick house, its walls blackened by coal smoke, with stacks of honeycomb briquettes and chopped firewood piled by the door. "Wan, we're home, watch your step." Lin Daong parked the car and carefully, almost clumsily, lifted me from the back seat as if I were a fragile porcelain doll. The room was small but tidy, furnished with an old wooden bed, a faded square table, and 2 stools. The air carried a faint scent of coal smoke and the distinct smell of a man living alone, a bit pungent, yet oddly comforting. "Brother, I'm staying here, what about sister-in-law?" I leaned against the headboard, wrapped in the patched but clean old quilt my brother had dug out, my voice weak. "Don't mention her." Lin Daong was squatting by the stove, poking at the fire, and didn't turn around. His tone was gruff. "I divorced that gold digger long ago. It's just me in this house now. Peace and quiet. You focus on resting here and getting better. That's what matters." The fire flared up under his prodding, orange flames dancing and chasing away the late autumn chill. He didn't press about what happened at the hospital, nor did he utter a word about Gu Zhan or Lu Shouyun. He just quietly stoked the stove, then rummaged through cabinets to find half a bag of dried noodles, 2 eggs, and a small, hardened piece of lard stored in a tin can. "Just make do with this for now. I'll go to the grocery store tomorrow to see if I can get some meat." He placed a bowl of clear noodle soup before me, with a poached egg floating in it and droplets of oil shimmering on the surface. His rough fingers fidgeted nervously against his faded work pants, worn pale from washing. The steam rising from the noodles made my eyes sting. In my past life, when Gu Zhan had demanded that I'd be understanding of Lu Shouyun and I ended up huddled by the cold stove nibbling on stale buns, had my older brother been like this too, somewhere in a corner, worrying about his hopeless little sister? "Brother." My throat tightened painfully. "Eat," Lin Daong insisted, thrusting the chopsticks into my hand. "Don't overthink it. If the sky falls, I'll be here to hold it up for you." Days drifted by slowly and painfully amid the crackle of the stove fire and the warmth of the noodle soup. While the physical wounds were gradually healing, the gaping hole torn open in my heart kept letting in an icy wind. Day and night. A few days later, an unexpected visitor knocked on the door. It was Gu Zhan's messenger. Xiao Zhang. The young man wore an expression of awkwardness and sympathy, holding a craft paper document folder in his hand. "Sis, Comrade Lin Wan." He corrected himself quickly, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "The battalion commander, Commander Gu, asked me to deliver this. He said he'd like you to review it." Lin Wan leaned against the headboard, her face still pale but her gaze calm as still water. She motioned for her elder brother to take the folder. Inside was the very divorce petition she had slapped onto Gu Zhan's epaulette, only now, beneath the document, appeared a line of forceful yet hesitantly penned characters. "Comrade Lin Wan, petition received. This matter carries significant consequences and should not be decided in haste. I urge you to reflect calmly and prioritize your health. We will discuss this further upon your recovery, ___Gu Zhan." Negotiate. Lin Wan's lips curled into a cold, mocking smile. Did he really think she was still the same Lin Wan from their past life, someone he could push around and placate with empty words of understanding? The condescending tone in his message was nothing but a stalling tactic, certain she would eventually yield and come crawling back. He didn't even mention Lu Shouyun, as if that public exposure in the hospital had been nothing but a bad dream. "Brother." Lin Wan's voice was soft but carried an unshakable resolve. "Get me some paper and a pen." Lin Daong immediately fetched a crumpled sheet of notebook paper and a short pencil. Propping herself up slightly, Lin Wan began to write, the lead scratching against the paper with a soft rustle. She didn't write a single extra word, just 2 heavy, decisive lines under Gu Zhan's message. Then, beside it, with every ounce of her strength, she scrawled 2 icy, final words: divorce. Now, she folded the paper neatly, tucked it back into the file, and handed it to Xiao Zhang. "Please return this exactly as it is." Xiao Zhang glanced at the 2 words etched deeply into the paper, his throat tightening. In the end, he said nothing, saluted, turned, and left. Military base, Gu Zhan's office. Gu Zhan stared at the paper in the file folder. The 2 thick, sharp characters, divorce, immediately, burned into his eyes like red-hot awls. A nameless fury mixed with indescribable irritation shot straight to his head. Frustrated, He tore open his collar and paced around the cramped office. How dare she? How could she become so unreasonable? He was equally heartbroken about losing the child. Sister Shoyun did wrong by stealing, but she's already fallen ill from fright and admitted her mistake. Couldn't she just give her a chance to reform, out of respect for a martyr's family, or for his own reputation? When did Lin Wan become so cold-blooded and calculating? Divorce. How would she survive in this world? A woman who just had a miscarriage, carrying the stigma of divorce. She's clearly not thinking straight. Battalion Commander Xiao Zheng spoke cautiously. Comrade Lin Wan looks very weak, but her attitude is extremely firm. Gu Zhan spun around sharply, his gaze piercing. Firm. She's confused. Someone's been poisoning her mind. The angry face of Lin Daong flashed through his thoughts. It must be that hothead stirring up trouble behind his back. He waved his hand irritably. Let's set this aside for now. We'll talk when she's recovered and calmed down. He shoved the report containing Lin Wan's icy response into the bottom drawer, frustration evident in his movements. Deep down, he still couldn't believe, or refused to believe, that the Lin Wan who once had eyes only for him could be so resolute. Military family compound. Lu Shoyun was indeed sick, ever since being publicly exposed in the hospital room that day. She had been holed up at home, her face sallow, her eyes panicked, often clutching Gu Jianmen's portrait and weeping. Gu Zhan was furious with her, but seeing her like this and remembering his fallen comrade Gu Jianmen, his anger lodged in his chest and turned into a heavy sigh. He sternly reprimanded her, ordering her to return all the stolen items and withholding several months of her living allowance. Lu Shoyun tearfully agreed, putting on a show of deep remorse. However, when Gu Zhan once again tossed Lin Wan's demand for an immediate divorce onto the table in frustration, and Lu Shoyun accidentally caught a glimpse of it while coming in to pour water, a viper-like glint flashed beneath her lowered eyelids. The opportunity had arrived. She knew Gu Zhan all too well. This man valued loyalty, but he valued face even more, especially the honor of a soldier and the stability of his family. Lin Wan was now like a stubborn, unyielding rock, completely unreasonable and even dragging Lu Shoyun's own disgrace into it. Gu Zhan was dragging his feet on the divorce, firstly because he thought Lin Wan couldn't survive without him, secondly because he feared the scandal would cause a stir and reflect poorly on him, and thirdly, perhaps there was also a sliver of unacknowledged resentment at being defied and a loss of control. But the fire of bad influence was one that she, Lu Shoyun, could stoke into an inferno. A few days later, a rumor, like a venomous insect with wings, began to spread silently through the military family compound. The core of the rumor was utterly vicious. Lin Wan had long had a lover at the cotton mill, a widowed technician. She had deliberately gotten rid of the baby this time just to get a divorce and run off with her illicit lover. Battalion Commander Gu was being cuckolded. The rumor was crafted with chilling plausibility. Lin Wan did indeed work at the cotton mill. There truly was a single technician employed there. Her sudden, fierce determination to divorce seemed inherently suspicious through a traditional lens. In no time, family members unaware of the truth gazed at Gu Zhan with pity, whispering among themselves in hushed tones. The political commissar's office. Gu Zhan was summoned. The commissar, surnamed Li, was a stern old revolutionary. He rapped his knuckles on the desk, his tone grave. Comrade Gu Zhan, personal family matters are, in principle, not the organization's concern, but the fallout is severe. This situation with your wife, Comrade Lin Wan, and then there's the issue of that Lu Shoyun. What in the world is going on? The gossip circulating outside is vile. They're saying all sorts of things. This is doing tremendous damage, both to your personal reputation and to the honor of the military. Gu Zhan's face turned ashen, his fists clenched audibly. He had, of course, heard the filthy rumors himself. At first, he was consumed by rage, itching to drag the slanderers out and have them shot. But after the fury subsided, a darker thought coiled around him like a venomous vine. Could it be? Could there be some hidden truth behind Lin Wan's desperate, frantic rush to divorce? That technician, once planted, the seed of doubt, nourished by the poisonous gossip, instantly grew into a twisted, toxic tree. The last vestiges of his hesitation and complicated feelings toward Lin Wan, feelings born from a sense of guilt, were instantly incinerated by overwhelming fury and the shame of his masculine pride being trampled, especially when the commissar sternly pointed out that issues of personal conduct could directly impact promotion evaluations. The last thread of Gu Zhan's rationality snapped completely. Commissar, Gu Zhan shot to his feet, his chest heaving violently, his voice hoarse with the anguish of betrayal and finality. I have failed to manage my household properly. I brought shame upon the organization. I request the organization's approval. for Lin Wan and me to divorce. As for Lu Xiuyun, her theft is a proven fact. I will deal with her severely and have her moved out of the military family compound. Please believe in my party loyalty. My personal affairs will never interfere with my duties. In that moment, considerations for his future. Rage over the betrayal, the crushing weight of malicious rumors, and the last shred of affection for the now cold and resolute Lin Wan were all extinguished, overwhelming everything else. He chose to cut the Gordian knot, to preserve his military honor and career prospects. The truth, before the tide of malice and immense pressure, it no longer mattered. Subconsciously, he even needed to believe the rumors to make his decision to agree to the divorce seem less humiliating and passive. The cotton mill residential compound, when Gu Zhan himself appeared in his crisp military uniform, his face as dark as a stormy sky, holding the officially stamped and approved divorce papers and a thin property settlement agreement, Lin Wan showed no surprise. She didn't even let him inside. Meeting him at the door, the late autumn wind tousled the strands of hair on her forehead, making her still pale face appear even more aloof. Calmly, she took the documents. Her eyes scanning the bright red official seal and Gu Zhan's flamboyant, forceful signature that seemed driven by a venting fury. Lin Wan, Gu Zhan's voice was dry and tight, his gaze complex as he looked at her, lingering anger, scrutiny, and perhaps a trace of pain so faint even he refused to acknowledge it. You, take care of yourself. He wanted to ask about that technician, but in the end, his military pride and disdain for sordid topics sealed his lips. He had convinced himself of her impurity, which made his decision to agree to the divorce seem far more justified. Lin Wan lifted her gaze to meet his, her eyes clear and icy like a bottomless cold pool. They vividly reflected Gu Zhan's forced anger and concealed disarray, as well as the figure lurking behind him at the corner of the courtyard wall, Lu Xiuyun, peering out with a smug, triumphant expression. So that's how it is. The corner of Lin Wan's mouth curled upward ever so slightly. It wasn't a smile, but a cold, knowing arc filled with endless mockery and final liberation. She didn't spare Gu Zhan another glance, nor did she acknowledge his meaningless parting words. Take care. Right in front of him, she meticulously folded the divorce papers and tucked them into her inner pocket, the cold document pressed against her chest like a block of ice finally melting. Then she turned, her slender yet upright figure striding resolutely through the simple, solid door of her home, from which warm, golden firelight glowed. Thud, a soft click, and the door closed. Outside, the leaden gray of late autumn in 1983 framed Gu Zhan's rigid figure in the cold wind, shut out in another world by that door, while in the corner, Lu Xiuyun's face betrayed an unmistakable, smug and venomous grin. Inside, the fire crackled in the hearth. Lin Wan leaned against the door and slowly slid down to the floor. She closed her eyes, and two streams of scalding tears finally broke through the icy dam, pouring down in a torrent, washing away the bloodstains of her past life and the humiliation of this one. The flimsy piece of paper in her hand now felt as heavy as 1,000 pounds. The shackles shattered, the debt was paid. Lin Wan's true rebirth began at this very moment. The wind howled outside the window, as if singing a dirge for the past that had completely died, while also playing the overture for a soul reborn from the ashes. By day, Lin Daon toiled away sweating in the machine repair shop, and after work, he'd dive straight into the kitchen, clumsily figuring out how to turn limited grain and oil ration coupons into something nutritious. He somehow got hold of a small packet of brown sugar and without fail made me a bowl every single day. He asked his coworkers to trade for eggs on the black market a few times, but never ate a single one himself. Burying them all at the bottom of my bowl, once I could move a little, I started tidying up the small room. At the very bottom of a dusty, old wooden crate stuffed with old newspapers and junk, I dug out a small, heavy bundle wrapped in blue cloth. Unwrapping it revealed several old books with yellowed pages and curled edges. On top was the self-study series for mathematics, physics, and chemistry, high school edition. Underneath was a thin copy of the Barefoot Doctor Manual, and a stack of neatly cut, hemp thread-bound white paper, its edges already yellowed and brittle. My fingertips brushed over the familiar rough paper, and my heart felt gripped by an icy hand. In my past life, during countless late nights and during Lu Xiuyun's cruelty and Gu Zhan's neglect, in that cold room in the military family compound that belonged to the Captain Gu's wife, but felt more like a servant's quarters, these secretly hidden old books and notes were my only solace and respite. How I had longed to stand on my own 2 feet like those women doctors in white coats from the books, relying on my own skills. But that faint spark was ultimately snuffed out by the identity and responsibilities of being Mrs. Gu, by Lu Xiuyun's endless, harassment troublemaking. And by Gu Zhan's so-called considerate words of just stay home and relax, between the pages was tucked an old photo the size of a palm. The girl in the photo wore a faded blue cloth jacket, with 2 dark black braids, standing under the old locust tree at County First High School, her smile shy yet bright, her eyes brimming with hope for the future. That was 17-year-old Lin Wan, who had just received her high school acceptance letter. On the back of the photo, written in pen, were 2 lines of delicate yet forceful small characters. Knowledge changes fate. Lin Wan, you must break free. Tears surged without warning, falling like heavy raindrops onto the yellowed photograph, spreading dark water stains. Break free, the path I failed to take in my past life. This time, even if I have to crawl, I will claw my way out. I pressed the photo tightly against my chest. The cold tears trickled into the corner of my mouth, bitter and astringent. Yet they felt like the final surge of strength injected into parched land. Brother, I said that evening, as Lin Daong was eating steamed cornbread with pickles, pointing at the old books on the table. My voice was calm yet carried undeniable resolve. Help me find these books. I want to read them. Lin Daong froze for a moment, his eyes shifting between the tattered books and my pale but determined face. A complex light flickered in his clouded eyes. Without asking why, he nodded firmly, stuffing the last bite of bread into his mouth. All right, I'll polish the desk nice and bright for you tomorrow. The difficulty of reviewing far exceeded my expectations. My body hadn't fully recovered yet, and sitting for long periods caused a dull ache in my lower abdomen. The Cotton Mills residential area had poor conditions with unstable voltage, causing the dim yellow light bulb to flicker constantly. In the harsh winter, the only source of heat in the room was a coal stove. Sitting at the desk studying, my hands and feet would go numb from the cold, forcing me to rest a hot water bottle on my knees for warmth. My knowledge had become frighteningly rusty. High school algebra formulas, chemical equations, physics theorems. After more than a decade of life's hardships in my previous existence, they had all blurred into chaotic shadows. Opening the textbooks, those once familiar symbols and terms now seemed alien and impenetrable, but I had no way back. The firelight from the stove illuminated the open books and my focused profile. The pencil scratched across rough draft paper as I worked through calculations repeatedly, only to start over again and again. When I hit a wall, I'd furrow my brow and press my lips until they turned pale. Often working late into the night, when exhaustion overwhelmed me, I'd splash cold water on my face or pinch my own thigh to stay awake. Lin Daong didn't understand these academic matters, but he supported me quietly in his own way. He asked someone to borrow old reference books from the factory library for me. He unraveled the work gloves issued by the factory and knitted me a pair of fingerless wool gloves. He saved his cigarette money to occasionally trade for a small packet of white sugar on the black market, which he'd mix into water for me to drink, claiming it would nourish my brain. Time slipped quietly from winter to spring to the sound of scratching pencils and the howling north wind outside the window. The scorching July heat arrived, and so did the day of the National College entrance exams. The exam was held at City No. 1 High School. Lin Daong had taken the day off specially, waking up before dawn to pedal me there on his worn-out bicycle. Traveling over 10 miles, he wore his best faded blue work clothes. Standing like a silent mountain under the sweltering shade outside the exam hall, when the final bell rang, I walked out with the crowd, the glaring sunlight almost blinding. Lin Daong rushed over immediately, his sweaty, sun-darkened face full of tension. Wan, how was it? Are you tired? Did you do all right? Looking at the sweat-soaked wrinkles on his forehead and the pure, unadulterated concern and anxiety in his eyes, my tightly wound nerves suddenly relaxed. An overwhelming weariness and an indescribable ache washed over me. I shook my head gently, my voice hoarse from disuse and tinged with a barely noticeable sob. Brother, I did my best. All that remained was a long and agonizing wait. One day in early August, the incessant chirping of cicadas frayed my nerves. I was sitting on a small stool by the door, reading my dog-eared copy of the Barefoot Doctor's Manual in the daylight, when Lin Daong burst in like a gust of wind, drenched in sweat. He clutched a pale yellow paper tightly in his hand, his face was contorted with overwhelming excitement, and his voice cracked and trembled uncontrollably. Wan, the letter, it's here, stamped with a big red seal, from the capital. It's a letter from the capital. My heart skipped a beat, then began pounding so violently it ached in my chest. I shot to my feet, and the manual fell to the ground with a thud. Lin Daong rushed up to me, thrusting the letter into my hands, his thick, trembling finger pointed at the crimson seal in the lower right corner of the envelope. Look, Capital Medical University, School of Clinical Medicine, it's the acceptance letter. Wan, my dear sister, you got in, you made it. The pale yellow envelope felt heavy and substantial. Emblazoned on it were the solemn university emblem and the bold, powerful characters spelling Capital Medical University. The bright red words admission notice and the official seal in the corner burned like a flame against my fingertips, which trembled so violently I could barely hold the thin envelope. I took a deep breath and, mustering all my strength, tore open the seal and pulled out the notice inside, which bore the same crimson university emblem and lettering, Dear Lin Wan, after review and approval, you have been admitted to our School of Clinical Medicine. The words that followed blurred and wavered before my eyes, an overwhelming, indescribable heat surged to my head, instantly drowning all my senses. In my ears echoed Lin Dao's ecstatic, incoherent shouts and the deafening thrum of my own heartbeat. Everything around me began to spin, the sunlight grew unbearably bright, memories flashed and collided like shattered fragments before me. The howling wind when I was pushed down the stairs in my past life. The brown sugar water Gu Zhan brought me in the hospital, Lu Shouyun's hypocritical tears, the rough palm of my eldest brother handing me something, the sound of my frozen fingers scratching across draft paper on bitterly cold winter nights. Brother, I opened my mouth, wanting to say something, but my throat felt blocked by a searing hot iron. No sound came out. The icy pillar of hatred and resentment that had sustained me for an entire year crumbled completely in that instant. Everything went black before my eyes. The world spun into chaos. Wan. In the final moment before losing consciousness, there was Lin Dao's panicked cry, and his firm, warm embrace that carried the scent of sweat and engine oil. Provincial capital, military district auditorium. The brilliantly lit auditorium glowed as bright as daylight. A massive red banner hung above the stage, warmly celebrating the successful conclusion of the XX Military District Summer Competition and Commendation Ceremony. Below, rows of officers in crisp uniforms adorned with various ranks sat with solemn yet proud expressions. Gu Zhan occupied a center-front seat, the stars on his epaulets gleaming under the lights. As the outstanding battalion commander of the armored unit in the competition, he had just received a third-class merit medal and certificate from the commanding officer. Thunderous applause erupted as camera flashes went off. He rose and delivered a crisp military salute to the assembly, his posture ramrod straight like a pine tree, his face bearing the characteristically restrained yet profound pride of a soldier. As the ceremony drew to a close, the atmosphere relaxed. An officer from the military district's propaganda department, carrying a stack of freshly delivered newspapers, cheerfully distributed them to the front row leaders, commanders. Political Commissar, the provincial paper just arrived. Front page headlines bring great news for our province. The senior political commissar chuckled as he took the newspaper and unfolded it. His eyes habitually scanned the eye-catching headline on the front page, and his smile stiffened slightly before transforming into undisguised astonishment and admiration. Well, I'll be. This year's provincial science top scorer in the college entrance exam has been announced, and it's a young woman. Her total score is this high. Impressive, truly impressive, and she's going to Capital Medical University, a future angel in white. The senior political commissar's voice boomed with genuine praise. His words immediately caught the attention of several other senior officers nearby, who gathered around to take a look. Really, let me see, Lin Wan, that name sounds familiar, a deputy commander said, adjusting his glasses. Lin Wan, Zhao Mingda. The regimental political commissar sitting next to Gu Zhan instinctively repeated the name. He suddenly seemed to recall something, his expression turning peculiar as he quickly glanced at Gu Zhan beside him. Gu Zhan was still basking in the joy of his recent achievement and the relief of the meeting's imminent conclusion when the name Lin Wan struck him like an invisible fist, clenching his heart. Impossible. It must be someone with the same name. How could she, a housewife who never finished middle school, possibly? He forced himself to maintain a calm facade, yet his gaze involuntarily darted with barely concealed urgency toward the old political commissar's newspaper. On the front page of the provincial daily, a grainy black and white photo dominated the layout. The girl in the picture wore a faded floral blouse, her hair tied in a simple ponytail. Her face was lean but sharply defined, her eyes meeting the lens with tranquil composure. A faint, almost ethereal smile gracing her lips as if transcending time itself. Below the photo, a bold, black headline screamed, From humble roots to brilliance, provincial science top scorer Lin Wan gains admission to Capital Medical University with outstanding results. Subheading, A cotton mill worker rises from adversity, penning a new chapter of her destiny. Lin Wan, it really is her. Gu Zhan's blood seemed to freeze in an instant, the joy of his achievements. The glory of the ceremony, shattered like fragile glass under this sudden blow. He stared fixedly at the black and white photograph, at those calm, almost unfamiliar eyes. The face held the contours he remembered, yet felt utterly alien. Gone was the gentleness and timidity of his memory, replaced only by a rock-solid resilience and an icy detachment. Cotton mill worker, rising from adversity, top science student, Capital Medical University. Every word struck his consciousness like a sledgehammer. That Lin Wan, the one he'd told to be considerate of others, the one he believed couldn't survive without him, that Lin Wan whom he'd allowed Lu Xiaoyun to humiliate repeatedly, who'd finally resolutely demanded a divorce from her sickbed. A wave of profound absurdity and indescribable panic washed over him like an icy tide, drowning him instantly. He felt his breath catch in his throat. The chatter and applause of the senior officers around him seemed to come through thick frosted glass, distant and muffled. Only the calm face in the newspaper and those cold, printed words remained vividly imprinted on his retinas, burning into his nerves. The awards ceremony concluded amidst stirring military music. Officers congratulated one another and filed out of the auditorium in small groups, the atmosphere buzzing with excitement. Yet Gu Zhan sat rigidly in his chair like a soul sculpture, clutching the third-class merit certificate so tightly that his knuckles turned white and the edges crumpled. The provincial newspaper had been quietly slipped into his hand by political commissar Zhao Mingde. Battalion Commander Gu. Zhao Mingde's voice sounded beside him, carrying a hint of complex sigh. Gu Zhan snapped back to reality, his throat so dry and tight he couldn't utter a single syllable. He rose somewhat awkwardly, grabbed the newspaper without even saying goodbye, and stumbled out of the bustling auditorium. Outside, the summer night breeze carried the day's residual warmth, yet he felt no comfort, only a bone-chilling cold. He didn't know how he made it back to the barracks, nor how he ended up at his cold desk, trembling as he repeatedly dialed the public telephone number in the cotton mill residential area. The endless busy signal cut through him like a dull knife. After what felt like countless attempts, the call finally went through. A gruff male voice with a thick local accent came through. "Hello, who's this? I'm looking for Lin Wan." Lin Wan from the cotton mill. Gu Zhan's voice was hoarse and urgent. "Lin Wan." The man on the other end paused. "Oh, the one who got into university. She's long gone. She's a phoenix that's flown up to the highest branch now. Went off to the capital for her studies. Left days ago. Click asterisk." The receiver slipped from Gu Zhan's grasp and crashed heavily onto the desk. Capital Medical University. The provincial newspaper bearing her photo burned against his chest like a red-hot iron. The person he had so easily abandoned, the one he assumed would always wait for him, had flown away without looking back, soaring to heights he could never reach or even imagine. An unprecedented, overwhelming emptiness and panic seized him. It was as if the solid ground beneath his feet had crumbled away, revealing a bottomless void. No way. He shot to his feet, his eyes blazing with an almost obsessive madness. He couldn't lose her like this. He had to go find her. She must just be acting out of spite. Deep down, she still cared for him. This thought seized his entire rationality like a lifeline, overwhelming him in an instant. He submitted his leave request with the flimsiest of excuses at lightning speed. Regimental Commissar Zhao Mingde studied his red-eyed, clearly distraught top officer, hesitated with unspoken words, then finally sighed and signed the approval. 2 days later, Gu Zhan stood travel-worn before the stately gates of Capital Medical University, having swapped his uniform for a faded gray mouse suit. He tried to blend in, but his soldier's posture and the unyielding intensity in his gaze still clashed with the scholarly atmosphere. He clenched his fists, his palms slick with cold sweat. The folded newspaper clipping tucked inside his breast pocket felt like a branding iron, burning him with anxiety. He kept imagining the moment he would see Lin Wan, over and over. He rehearsed his apology in his mind, even planning how to explain why he shouldn't have believed the rumors about Lu Xiaoyun, how to promise her a better future. Time crawled by in agonizing slowness. The setting sun cast a golden glow over the old school gate, stretching Gu Zhan's lonely, waiting figure into a long shadow. Finally, as the last traces of twilight faded below the horizon, a few figures emerged from the school gate. Among them was a slender, tall figure in a simple white shirt and dark blue trousers, a canvas backpack slung over one shoulder. She was turned slightly, speaking quietly with a middle-aged man who wore glasses and carried himself with a scholarly air. It was Lin Wan. Gu Zhan's heart leaped into his throat. Almost instinctively, he straightened his back, stepped forward, ready to call out the name that had lingered on the tip of his tongue countless times. But the next second, he saw Lin Wan's face clearly under the soft glow of the streetlight. Her face had grown much thinner, shedding the last trace of youthful innocence from his memory, its contours now defined yet gentle. Her skin was pale with a scholarly pallor, as if untouched by sunlight for too long. What shocked him most was her gaze, calm, profound. Like still autumn waters without a ripple, there was none of the surprise, grievance, or resentment he had anticipated, not even the slightest flicker of emotion. She looked at him as she would a tree by the roadside, a stone, a complete stranger. She was tilting her head slightly, listening intently to the middle-aged scholar beside her, a faint, polite smile of concentration gracing her lips. This composed, focused demeanor was something Gu Zhan had never seen in her before. It was as if her entire being was immersed in a world he could neither comprehend nor reach. A wave of icy cold shot up from his feet, spreading through his entire body, shattering all his preconceptions and rehearsed words into pieces. Lin Wan, the hoarse cry tore from his throat almost instinctively, raspy and parched, carrying an urgency and panic he hadn't even recognized in himself. Under the hazy glow of the street lamp, Lin Wan's steps halted. She turned toward the sound. The dim yellow light cast soft shadows across her face, illuminating her expression with stark clarity, calm, a profound, bottomless calm. Those eyes that once held his reflection now clearly mirrored Gu Zhan's travel-worn, slightly disheveled figure, yet not a single ripple stirred within them. The bespectacled scholar beside her also paused, glancing at Gu Zhan with puzzlement before turning his gaze to Lin Wan. Gu Zhan's heart clenched under the weight of her placid, unreadable gaze. He instinctively straightened his posture, trying to reclaim some semblance of control. His Adam's apple bobbed with difficulty as he spoke in a low, urgent voice that brooked no argument, yet carried a barely perceptible tremor. "Come home with me." Under the dim street lamp, Gu Zhan's elongated shadow fell upon the mottled ground. His slightly worn Zhongshan suit couldn't conceal his soldier's upright bearing, though his shoulders seemed to sag slightly under some invisible burden. He stood at the school gate like an abrupt boundary marker, blocking the path to the hallowed halls of knowledge. "Come home with me," for words, hoarse and urgent, carrying the weariness of a 1,000-mile journey and the ingrained authority that was second nature to him, as if this were merely the finale of some farce. He had arrived, and she should now drop everything to follow him obediently. Lin Wan's steps faltered only slightly, without even a crack in her expression. Her deep, pool-like eyes clearly reflected Gu Zhan's figure, yet it was as if they mirrored a roadside stone, utterly unmoved. She didn't even glance at his outstretched, calloused hand, her gaze sweeping past him as though he were mere air. Then, with perfect composure, she turned slightly toward the bespectacled, scholarly middle-aged man beside her. Her voice was soft yet clear and steady, filled with complete focus and just the right touch of courtesy. "Professor Zhou, regarding the critical value issue for serum separation in the experimental control group you mentioned earlier, I rechecked several sets of data last night and noticed a slight time differential variable between the 3rd and 7th group separation times. This could potentially affect the significance of our results. I had the data logbook in my bag. Would you prefer to return to the lab now to review it together? Or should I prepare a summary and leave it on your desk first thing tomorrow morning?" Her speech was measured and clear, the technical terms she used completely lost on Gu Zhan. The focused immersion, the natural scholarly respect she showed her professor, stood in stark, cruel contrast to the icy indifference she directed at him. Professor Zhou, clearly taken aback by the sudden go-home command, was quickly drawn in by Lin Wan's professional inquiry. He adjusted his glasses, a flicker of approval in his eyes. "Oh, a time differential variable, that's very observant, Lin Wan. Now, well," he glanced instinctively at his wristwatch, then at Gu Zhan, frozen and grim-faced under the streetlight, seeming slightly embarrassed. "It is rather late now, and the lab building, data waits for no one." "Professor," Lin Wan's voice remained calm, yet carried an undeniable insistence. "Especially subtle variables like this, they can directly impact the credibility of the entire experimental model. I can compile a preliminary analysis tonight." As she spoke, she reached to unzip her canvas backpack, making a move to pull out her notebook. She was completely ignoring Gu Zhan's presence, treating him like inconvenient air, a fury born of utter contempt and an agony gnawed by profound panic. Like two venomous serpents, instantly constricted his heart. He watched her, wholly absorbed in her academic discussion, not even sparing him a glance, saw the focused attention she gave that professor, and the image of her past self, docile and enduring, clashed violently in his mind with her current profile, cold and sharp as frost. "Lin Wan." Gu Zhan lunged forward a step, his tall frame radiating intense pressure, nearly blocking their path. His bloodshot eyes were fixed fiercely on her, his voice hoarse and distorted by extreme emotion, laced with a desperation verging on loss of control and a last shred of forced authority. "I'm talking to you. Come home with me. Whatever it is, we'll discuss it at home." He finally shed that forced composure, revealing the anxiety within, and a barely perceptible hint of pleading. Lin Wan finally, truly looked at him. Her gaze was so unnervingly calm it sent chills down one's spine. She faintly furrowed her brows, as if contemplating some trivial obstacle. Then she spoke with utter detachment, her voice low yet cutting through the dim evening like an ice-forged blade. "Comrade Chief." She even used that title which once symbolized his glory, now leaving only detached sarcasm. "Excuse me." She turned slightly, her arm moving with natural grace in a protected gesture as she gently steadied the somewhat flustered Professor Zhou beside her, the motion fluid and polite. "I'm rushing to finish my experimental data." Her words hung in the air as she deliberately avoided even a glance at Gu Zhan, treating him like nothing more than an inconvenient obstacle on the roadside. Supporting Professor Zhou, the two of them effortlessly sidestepped his rigid form, walking with composed steps toward the brightly lit laboratory building. The sharp, steady click of her heels against the ground echoed like icy drumbeats, each strike hammering into Gu Zhan's already shattered heart. She was gone, right in front of him. She walked away without looking back, arm in arm with another man, all for some damn lab data. A tsunami of sheer abandonment and rage, the kind that shatters every last shred of dignity, instantly overwhelmed Gu Zhan. The dam of his rationality completely collapsed. "Lin Wan, stop right there," he roared with a guttural, beast-like cry, his crimson eyes locked solely on her resolute retreating figure. His body moved before his mind could process, launching forward like a frenzied panther. His hand shooting out to seize her arm, he couldn't let her leave, he had to bring her back, just as his calloused fingers were about to brush against Lin Wan's arm, as if she had eyes in the back of her head. Lin Wan didn't break stride or even glance behind. The hand that had been lightly supporting Professor Zhou dropped naturally to her side, slipped into the side pocket of her canvas backpack, and with a subtle flick of her wrist, she sent an object hurtling through the air. A brief, cold silver arc cut through the dim streetlight, accompanied by a faint whizzing sound, flying straight toward Gu Zhan's face. Gu Zhan's hand shot out instinctively, the object felt cold and hard in his grasp, carrying the distinct weight of metal. He unconsciously opened his palm, where the dim streetlight clearly illuminated what lay within, a Hero brand fountain pen. Its body was coated in that familiar dark green lacquer, but the gold plating on the cap edge had worn away from long use, revealing dull copper beneath. On the clip, tiny initials GZ, his initials, were engraved. This was the pen his regiment commander had personally awarded him for meritorious service at the Laoshan front lines. He had treasured it deeply, until that argument when Lin Wan, her eyes red-rimmed, had asked to keep it as a memento. And now, this old pen that carried the weight of bygone days and what he thought were cherished memories, had been tossed back to him like garbage. The cold metal dug into his palm, its chill piercing to the bone. Gu Zhan froze in place as if struck by a petrification spell. All movement, all shouting, all fury and panic, everything solidified in that instant. His bloodshot eyes remained fixed on the worn old pen in his palm, as if seeing it clearly for the first time. The faded plating, the dull lacquer. It was like a cruel mirror reflecting both his self-righteous past and his utterly wretched present. Meanwhile, the sound of Lin Wan supporting Professor Zhou as they walked away had already faded into the bright lights of the laboratory building. He was left alone under the dim street lamp at the school gate, a complete and abandoned joke in the eyes of the world. The night wind swept through, rustling a few fallen leaves on the ground with a soft, whispering sound. Slowly, painstakingly slowly, Gu Zhan closed his hand, the icy old pen pressed firmly into his palm, a pain that seared his very soul. He looked down at the cold metallic glint in his hand. The street lamp pinned his long, solitary shadow to the cold concrete, like an abandoned statue slowly eroding with time. That cold hero pen felt like a scorching hot bullet casing lodged in his palm. The dim yellow light blurred the signs of wear on the pen's body, yet the engraved letters GZ burned sharply into his retinas, stinging his eyes with their intensity. Lin Wan, you. He wanted to roar, to demand answers, to rush forward and seize that resolute figure disappearing into the light and shadow of the lab building, but his throat felt clogged with sandpaper, emitting only broken, raspy whispers. His outstretched hand froze mid-air, fingertips clinging to the phantom sensation of her sleeve brushing past, a touch so cold it pierced to the bone. The lab building's bright glass windows stared back like indifferent eyes, reflecting his current disarray. A man utterly cast out of her world, reduced to an insignificant obstacle. Occasional passing students shot him curious yet wary glances, their hushed whispers pricking at his proud military dignity like fine, needling threads. "Excuse me, I'm rushing to finish my experimental data." That voice, calm to the point of cruelty, echoed relentlessly in his ears. No hysteria, no bitter accusations, just an icy indifference that excised him completely from her life. She couldn't even be bothered to waste another shred of emotion on him. A colossal, unprecedented terror seized Gu Zhan's heart, worse than staring down the barrel of a gun. Only then did he truly understand. The Lin Wan who had once obediently waited in the military family compound, cooked for him, and whom he demanded understand everyone, was truly gone. She died on that cold operating table, in the cup of hypocritical brown sugar water he'd handed her, and at the base of the building Lu Xiuyun had pushed her from. The woman living now was Lin Wan of Capital Medical University. Lin Wan, the top science scholar. Her world consisted of cold experimental data, rigorous academic discourse, and a future he could neither comprehend nor ever hope to reach. And he, Gu Zhan, a young battalion commander freshly decorated with a third-class merit and brimming with promise, had become a complete and utter joke in her eyes, in front of her Professor Zhou, and in the brilliant world she was racing toward. A stifled, beast-like gasp, like that of a dying animal, was wrenched from the depths of his chest, his fist clenched violently, the hard cap of the old pen digging sharply into his palm. The physical pain strangely subdued the more violent, desperate tearing sensation in his heart. He couldn't collapse here. He couldn't lose his composure at the gates of this hallowed institution like some abandoned, resentful husband. Gu Zhan forced his momentarily stooped back to straighten. The soldier's ingrained willpower, though flickering like a candle in the wind, asserted itself. He turned slowly, movements stiff and labored, then trudged away step by heavy step from the lamplit area that chilled him to the bone. Each step felt like treading on scorching embers. Behind him, the brightly lit laboratory building cast a glaring light from another world. Capital Medical University, women's dormitory. Under the dim glow of a desk lamp, Lin Wan spread open the hefty pathophysiology textbook. The pages were dense with notes, her weapons against forgetting and time. The pen whispered across the paper with calm precision. The dorm room was quiet, punctuated only by the soft rustle of her roommate turning pages. Lin Wan, a lively Beijing girl with a ponytail from the adjacent bed, leaned over and whispered, "That man downstairs just now, the one in the Zhongshan suit who looked really intimidating, he was looking for you, right? Do you know him?" Lin Wan's pen never paused, her gaze still fixed on the complex pathology diagram, her voice flat and detached, as if stating a fact that had nothing to do with her. "Just someone from the past. Doesn't matter, someone from the past." The girl grew even more curious. He looked like military, didn't he? The way he carried himself was terrifying, like he was ready to bite someone's head off. Lin Wan finally looked up, the dim lamplight casting faint shadows across her gaunt face. The corners of her lips lifted almost imperceptibly, a smile devoid of warmth, carrying only the cool detachment of one who has seen too much, tinged with a trace of imperceptible mockery. "Yes, I was a soldier once." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the heavy darkness outside the window before adding, her voice as light as a falling feather, one accustomed to giving orders. She spoke no further, lowering her head once more to immerse herself in the world of her book, as if the encounter at the school gate, enough to shatter every shred of a proud man's dignity, had been nothing more than a breeze skimming the water's surface, leaving not a single ripple behind. Her roommate watched her serene profile and felt an inexplicable chill, shrinking her neck slightly before wisely deciding not to press further. Military district, Gu Zhan's dormitory. The room was thick with a heavy scent of tobacco. The curtains were drawn tight, shutting out all outside light. Gu Zhan hadn't turned on the lamp, merely leaning against the cold wall with several crushed cigarette butts scattered at his feet. The crimson embers glowed and faded in the darkness as he clutched the Hero brand fountain pen, his knuckles white with strain. The cool metal had long been warmed by his body heat, yet it couldn't dispel the bone-deep chill in his heart. Lin Wan, Lin Wan. He murmured the name unconsciously, his voice hoarse and ragged. His mind kept flashing back to her resolute eyes in the hospital bed as she pulled out the 4 and signed the divorce papers. To her detached expression at the school gate when she supported the professor and calmly said "excuse me." To that calm, unfamiliar face in the newspaper alongside the glaring headlines "Science Top Scorer" and "Capital Medical University." He was wrong, terribly wrong, wrong beyond all redemption, all that talk about understanding the bigger picture, and how hard it is for a widow and her orphan. All that nonsense about her betraying him, it was just a flimsy veil to cover his own cowardice, favoritism, and wounded pride. With his own hands, through his repeated understanding, he pushed the woman who adored him completely into an icy abyss, and snuffed out her last flicker of hope. He thought she couldn't live without him, but in the end, it was him. Without her, his soul had nowhere to return. Thud, a dull, heavy sound. It was the sound of a fist slamming hard into solid concrete. The searing pain shooting through his knuckles was nothing, not even 1/10,000th of the agony tearing through his heart. In the darkness, Gu Zhan's bloodshot eyes stared fixedly into the void. They churned with tidal waves of regret, mixed with the fury of being utterly rejected and abandoned, until it all settled into a still, dead despair. He grabbed the opened bottle of strong liquor from the floor, tilted his head back, and gulped it down fiercely. The harsh liquid burned his throat, making him cough violently. Tears welled up reflexively. He didn't care. He only drank more desperately, as if clutching at a lifeline, trying to numb his shattered heart with the searing pain. He didn't know how much time passed before the bottle clattered emptily to the ground. Gu Zhan's large frame curled into a ball in the cold corner, his head buried deep in his arms, his shoulders shaking uncontrollably. Suppressed, wounded animal-like sobs echoed low in the deathly silent room. There were no tears, only broken, desperate cries torn from his throat. Cotton Mill residential quarters. Under the dim light bulb, Lin Daong carefully placed a brand new money order beneath the glass desk cover, next to a photo of Lin Wan wearing a white lab coat, taken at the entrance of her medical school. In the picture, his sister's eyes sparkled with intelligence, her smile calm yet radiating strength. "Brother, I've received this month's stipend and sent half to you. Don't scrimp, make sure to eat well and buy what you need. Everything's fine on my end. The professor thinks highly of me and even included me in an important research project." The letter bore Lin Wan's elegant yet firm handwriting. Lin Daong's rough fingers gently traced his sister's face in the photo before brushing against the money order. His clouded eyes glistened with emotion as a heartfelt grin spread across his face. Stepping outside, he drew a deep breath of the chilly, coal-scented night air and felt renewed energy coursing through him. Next door, Lu Shoyun's shrill cries and a child's wailing echoed through the walls, peppered with phrases like "ungrateful wretch," "heartless," and "serves you right." Ever since news spread of Lin Wan's university acceptance and Gu Zhan's divorce, Lu Shoyun's life had taken a turn for the worse. Though the theft of food coupons and a watch never went to court, the entire factory residential compound knew about it. The gossip alone was enough to ruin her. The Gu family cut ties with her completely, even taking their son Jijun away to live with his grandparents. Now she stood utterly alone, her reputation in tatters, barely scraping by on meager earnings from sweeping streets at the factory, her bitterness growing with each passing day. Lin Daong listened to the hysterical sobbing and cursing, let out a contemptuous tch, and slammed the door shut, blocking out the nauseating noise. He hummed a tuneless little ditty as he carefully scooped a bit of lard from a tin can, ready to fry himself an egg to celebrate his sister sending money home again. The firelight cast a warm, steady glow on his dark, honest face. In the brightly lit laboratory of Capital Medical University, Lin Wan, dressed in a pristine white lab coat, was intently adjusting the focus of her microscope. In her field of view, the microscopic world was both magnificent and precise, full of mysteries waiting to be unraveled. Outside the window, the biting chill of the early spring of 1984 could not dampen the fervent thirst for knowledge inside. Her journey had only just begun, and on that path, the shadow once cast by someone named Gu Zhan was long gone. Story 2. Mom finally discovered the secret son Dad had hidden for 8 years. She swore to sever ties with him, even if it meant leaving with nothing. "This time I stopped her, because I have been reborn. Dad is dying from a terminal illness, and once he passes, all his wealth will belong to Mom and me." Yeah. If Mom and Dad split up, would you choose to stay with Mom? When Mom asked me this question again, I no longer hesitated. I firmly told her, "Mom, don't get a divorce." Tears welled up in her eyes. "Do you know, that child your father had with another woman is only half a year younger than you? How can Mom swallow this bitterness? If we divorce, out of sight, out of mind. Wouldn't it be better for you and Mom? You're all I have." "Mom, that's not good." "Why not?" she asked. "Because I have been reborn. In my past life, after my parents divorced, Mom left with nothing to fight for my custody. The house, the money, the company that Mom and Dad had built from scratch, all of it went to that woman and her child. 2 months after the divorce, Dad died from advanced stomach cancer. The only reason Mom learned about that woman and her child was because he was dying. He wanted to pave the way for his illegitimate son while unwilling to give up half of his wealth to Mom. He fought tooth and nail for my custody, forcing Mom to give up their jointly earned assets just to take me with her. Right after she got the divorce papers, he married the other woman. After his death, the woman and her son legally inherited all his property, and Mom and I were relentlessly pursued by her. Whether Mom tried to start a business or work, they sabotaged everything. Even when she tried to set up a street stall, they sent thugs to target her. To support me, Mom had to resort to working in bars, and even fell into prostitution. The other woman tormented Mom for 10 years, and on my 18th birthday, Mom jumped from the 21st floor of a building. Even after Mom's death, the woman didn't leave me alone. She paid people to bully me at school, spread lies that I was the illegitimate child, and claimed my mother was the homewrecker, orphaned and alone. I was killed by a speeding truck one foggy night. The capital that besieged me and Mom came from the wealth the woman inherited from Dad. In this life, I will protect Mom and not let that despicable man succeed. Mom, do you believe in dreams? I recounted everything that had happened. Mom muttered to herself. Mom would never degrade herself to do such lowly things, nor would she ever abandon you. I know, but when pushed to the brink, who can guarantee they wouldn't grasp at the only lifeline available? Even if that lifeline is tainted, sometimes you have to hold your nose and grab it. Because of Dad's infidelity and deceit, Mom lost interest in managing the company. Dad took advantage of this, pretending to try to win Mom back, leading her to believe he still had feelings for her. Meanwhile, he took control of the company while Mom was distracted. Mom was skeptical, but her love for me was deeply ingrained. Even if it was just a dream, she would investigate. Mom went back to the company. That evening, she and Dad came home together. Dad's expression was tense and unpleasant. I approached him. Dad, are you a dirty cucumber? Dad was so angry he couldn't catch his breath for a long time. Netizens say that men who cheat are like dirty cucumbers. No matter how much you like them, you can't use them. Mom quickly covered my mouth. Stay off the internet a bit. And don't spout nonsense or learn those nasty things. I nodded hastily. Mom let go of me, and I asked again, Mom and Dad, are you still going to get a divorce? Mom smiled. Of course not. I've forgiven your father, and we three will continue to live well together. Dad's face was a mix of green and purple, and he scolded me a few times before returning to his room without having dinner. Mom's phone rang once, and she went to take a shower. I skillfully unlocked her phone. That woman, Wan Ling, was provoking Mom. She sent Mom photos of herself and Dad showing affection. The words were meant to provoke Mom to hurry up and divorce Dad. She insulted Mom by calling her a chicken that doesn't lay eggs, mocking her for not being as uninhibited as herself, and not winning Dad's affection. She also said that she and Dad were the true love. If it weren't for my maternal grandfather forcing Dad to marry Mom, they would have been a legitimate family. I replied for Mom, I don't believe it. Your photos must be photoshopped, right? I remember Mr. Yuan has a big wart on the left side of his butt, but it's not in your photo. Wan Ling actually sent over a steamy video to provoke Mom further. It was shot in 360-degree high definition, clearly showing the large wart on Dad's left buttock. It was disgusting. I held back my disgust, downloaded the original photos and videos, and sent them from Mom's account to mine. After dinner, I opened my computer to import the videos and photos. I added thick mosaics over the sensitive areas of Dad and Wan Ling, and posted them on my social media. The caption read, Auntie says she's very skilled, and Mom isn't as uninhibited as her. Now Dad despises Mom and wants to divorce her. What should Yaya do? Yaya doesn't want to be a child without a dad. Crying loudly, JPG, I'm not even 9 years old, posting this kind of dirty stuff. I shouldn't end up in jail, right? While Dad was trying to emotionally manipulate Mom, Wan Ling kept provoking Mom to get her to divorce sooner. Their schemes were loud and clear. I knew Dad would be angry, but I didn't expect him to be furious to this extent. He slapped me across the face, and I lost 2 teeth. Oh God, it hurt so much. But compared to the excruciating pain of being run over by a truck, this slap felt like a light drizzle. Mom jumped on him, scratching him and leaving his face a bloody mess. The marks were ugly and vivid. He ordered me to delete the video, and I obediently complied, but deleting it was useless. Who knows how many people had saved their video overnight. Several of my social media friends are always on the forefront of gossip, and I trust their fighting spirit won't disappoint Dad. Dad yelled at Mom, look at what a fine daughter you've raised. He slammed the door and left, my mouth full of blood. Mom tried to take me to the hospital while crying. I refused. Mom, when there's trouble, we should go to the police. Mom, feeling sorry for me, initially wanted to take me to the hospital but ended up being dragged by me to the police station, bleeding all the way there. Once inside, I finally vomited. With my mouth full of blood, I shakily extended my hand to a kind police officer, holding the 2 teeth I had kept. Auntie, Yaya wants to report a crime, after years of having things go his way. This was probably Dad's first time in a police station, and it was because he had beaten his own daughter. Despite his successful years and confident demeanor, he had never lost face like this before. His face was a mix of green and purple, and unpredictable. My teeth were gone, and my face was swollen like a proofed bun. the police officer said my injuries were severe enough for administrative punishment. If Mom and I insisted, they could detain Dad for 5 days or impose a fine. We could put Dad behind bars. I couldn't have asked for more. This bought my mom an extra 5 days. Dad used the private video he took of me to stir up trouble. I quickly found my old children's phone, pulled up the video between Wanling and my dad, and turned the brightness all the way up to show the uncles and aunties present. In the video, you can hear Auntie saying Dad likes her because she's skilled, and she even bore him a son, urging Mom to divorce Dad sooner, even though Dad is no prize. Yeah, don't want them to divorce. I don't want to be without a dad. I just wanted to seek advice from family friends on social media. As I spoke of the painful parts, my tears flowed like rivers, washing over my swollen cheeks. If there was a crack in the ground, I'm sure Dad would have dove right in. After an awkward moment, the uncles and aunties compassionately explained to me that posting such inappropriate content on social media is illegal, since I'm young and didn't know better. And I had deleted it promptly. They just gave me a verbal warning. Now everyone knows about Dad's betrayal, and they despise him even more. With Mom's and my persistence, and the truth laid bare, Dad could only face 5 days of tears behind bars. Relying on just a couple of teeth, I managed to buy Mom another 5 days, which felt like a good deal. Now wasn't the time to feel sorry for myself. After seeing the doctor, I persuaded Mom to go to the company. I also told her that several key positions at the company were held by Wanling's relatives. Mom, not wanting to waste time, asked a friend to find 2 strong female bodyguards to look after me, then rushed to the company to handle the situation. Dad could be described as a typical Phoenix man from the stories online, having grown up in a poor family supported by a widowed mother who struggled to put him through school. Mom's family wasn't particularly well off either, but fortunately, her father had once been allocated an apartment by his employer. The apartment was in a good location in the city center. After Mom and Dad graduated and got married, Grandpa sold the apartment to give them some startup capital. With that money, they turned a small workshop into a factory now worth nearly $1 billion. Although Mom is very smart and handles the company's affairs with ease, she is heavily influenced by her emotions. Dad had previously manipulated her using his and my emotional ties to persuade her to sign over everything to him. Mom thought she could start over, but the world is ever changing. And with me as a burden and Wanling constantly on her heels, it was not just about starting a business but even supporting the two of us was difficult. It seems a child is always a mother's weak spot. Without me, Mom would never have willingly given up her hard-earned achievements. I don't want to repeat the tragedies of my past life. In this life, it's my turn to protect Mom. After 5 days, Dad must have harbored deep resentment towards me and Mom. When he got out, he didn't even come home, but went straight to the love nest he had set up for Wanling and her son. Because of the video incident, Dad became the laughingstock of the company. Mom said that on Dad's first day back at work, he was like a gorilla entering a crowd, surrounded and quietly discussed by everyone. Some cynical aunties secretly cursed him and rolled their eyes at him. Fresh out of jail and facing such treatment, he lost his temper at the office and almost drove those people out. Of course, Mom stopped him, knowing that Mom had driven out Wanling's relatives from the company. Dad had a huge fight with her, their relationship irreparably broken. Dad knew he could no longer manipulate Mom emotionally to get his way. He agreed to divide half of his assets with Mom for a peaceful divorce. Mom learned from Dad's personal doctor about his illness, knowing that even if the surgery was successful, he didn't have long to live, which made it even less likely for her to agree. All of this confirmed what Mom and I had said. She would never trust Dad again. Dad also knew he didn't have much time left. Dragging this out wasn't in his favor, but Mom absolutely refused a peaceful separation. So he filed for divorce in court. Holding my hand, Mom pleaded with the court staff. Even though he was at fault first, my daughter and I are willing to forgive him. Our relationship has been so strong. We shouldn't give up on our marriage just because he strayed. I'd rather dismantle 10 temples than break up one marriage. I request that his application for divorce be rejected. Tearfully, I said, Daddy, Yaya doesn't want to lose you. Dad looked frustrated. He couldn't provide any proof that his relationship with Mom had broken down. His affairs only proved that he couldn't control his desires. But both Mom and I are willing to forgive him. Mom embraced his faults with an ocean's breadth of tolerance, hoping only that he would return to the family. After a long struggle, his first attempt at divorce ended in failure. If Dad wants a divorce again, he has to wait another 6 months if Mom doesn't agree to it. Sadly, he couldn't wait that long. Mom said that Dad took a lot of money from the company behind her back. He was planning for the future of Wanling and her son. He feared they wouldn't get anything if he died. He even made a will in secret, leaving his share of assets to his illegitimate child. Worried, I asked Mom, why don't you stop Dad? Mom told me not to worry too much. That she would handle things outside and wouldn't let unrelated people take advantage of us. I told Mom everything I knew in great detail. Dad couldn't deceive her anymore. I believe in Mom's ability to handle this without suffering any loss. In my past life, Mom and I suffered too much. I'm not heartless, but I don't want to give a single penny to that mother and son. Dad's actions deeply disappointed me. He never came home, so I had to go find him where he lived with Wan Ling and her son. I knew where they were staying. He had set up Wan Ling and her son in one of the top villa areas in our city. I had been here in my past life too, but at that time, I was begging Wan Ling. I knelt at their villa door, pleading with her to be generous and spare my mom and me. Regrettably, she pushed me to the ground with a kick, her fancy high heels pressing against my face as she laughed brilliantly. She said, "This is karma. It's your mother's fault for interfering in our love." The sharp heel of her shoe painfully poked my face, and some onlookers, upon hearing her words, spat at me and called me shameless. She said she would spare my mom if I knelt to her, and I really did kneel. She laughed even more joyously, supporting her son as they both shook with laughter. The innocent yet insipid face of her son nearly made me vomit. Now, it was my turn to collect some interest. I went to their villa with the female bodyguard my mom had given me, holding a photo of her and Dad. Asking from the entrance all the way to their villa, their door was wide open. The woman who used to boast in front of me and my mom was watering the garden with her son at the entrance. It seemed like a peaceful moment. Wan Ling auntie. Wan Ling was startled when she saw me, and seeing the group of neighborhood grandmothers and mothers behind me, her cheeks turned even paler. People always wondered why her husband was hardly at home. She had the nerve to tell me he was a busy company CEO flying here and there. Turns out she's just a mistress who can't be seen in daylight. Shameless. People thought she was gentle and kind. Who knew she was like this behind closed doors? Quite an eye-opener. Appearances can be deceiving. Who knows whether behind a good facade lies a human or a ghost? People of such poor character. Now we know. And we should avoid her in the future to prevent a bad influence on our children. Their comments snapped Wan Ling back to reality. She pretended not to know me, repeatedly saying I had the wrong person. Lying requires others to believe you. I showed everyone the photo, and clearly, they didn't believe her. Their comments grew harsher, and she angrily told us to get lost. I wiped my tears and began to plead, "Auntie Wan Ling, please don't let Dad divorce Mom. Okay, if you leave Dad, I can give you however much money you want. You like Dad's money, right? I also have a lot of New Year's money." With a crash, I smashed the piggy bank I was holding, scattering 1 and 50-cent coins all over the ground. I picked them up one by one and placed a handful into her hands. The disdain from the onlookers intensified. Her son, Yuan Shao, lunged at me, aiming to strike, but I quickly grabbed his ear, causing him to howl in pain. Wan Ling tried to intervene, but was held back by my 2 bodyguards. As I cried, I cursed, and while cursing, I kicked and scratched ferociously. I lost all reason in my rage, tightly grasping Yuan Shao and beating him mercilessly. "If it weren't for your father, he wouldn't have abandoned me. You stole my father. It's all your fault, all your fault." Yuan Shao, who was shorter than me by half a head and developed more slowly as a child, stood no chance against me. He cried out in pain from my beating. "He's not my brother. He's a devil, born with original sin. He and his shameless mother took everything from my mother and me, then crazily sought revenge against us. In an effort to salvage Wan Ling's reputation, the increasingly sensible Yuan Shao paid people to spread rumors at my school, claiming my mother was shameless and broke up their family, leading to my father's death. He even instigated some girls to lock me in the bathroom, tear up my textbooks and homework, falsely accuse me of cheating on exams, and have someone splash dirty water on me on my way home. He is rotten to the core. I won't let him off just because he's still a child. When Dad arrived, Yuan Shao was already bruised and in a sorry state. Wan Ling, holding her son, cried pitifully, while Dad, raising his hand, still wanted to hit me. My bodyguards shielded me, cautiously watching Dad, their hands half clenched, ready to restrain him if he attempted to strike, peeking through the gap between my protectors. I straightened my neck defiantly at Dad. "If you want to end up in jail again, go ahead, hit me, kill me. You knocked out 2 of my teeth last time. You want to hit me again, don't you? All I wanted was to protect our family. What did I do wrong? You shamelessly flirt with others. I'm truly cursed to have a father like you." The crowd watching grew larger, encircling us completely. Their comments shifted towards criticizing Wan Ling and Dad for their shamelessness. My words left him clutching his chest, staggering, and finally collapsing in the garden from the shock. I didn't expect Dad to be so weak that he'd faint like that. I immediately cried out and dialed for an ambulance. As the ambulance arrived, Wan Ling wanted to bring her bruised son with us to the hospital, but I forcefully pushed her away. Dad's anger led to a series of adverse reactions, and his cancer cells spread even more severely. The doctor said that without immediate surgery, he might not survive the month. Immediate surgery had a 30% chance of success. At best, the surgery would only extend his life by a year or so. When Dad woke up, the first thing he did was try to scold me, but Mom promptly slapped him hard. "Since you're already bedridden, just behave yourself." Dad was furious, but he was too weak to even walk a few steps, no match for Mom. I pressed him back onto the bed and relayed the doctor's advice, asking for his decision. I don't know if he had undergone surgery in his previous life, but he didn't last long and soon passed away. Dad looked devastated. It was clear he was deeply upset, but what did that have to do with Mom and me? Regardless of his choice, he couldn't escape death eventually. He ultimately chose to undergo the surgery. I wasn't surprised. As fearful of death as he was, he wouldn't miss any chance at life. Grandma died early, and now he had only Mom and me as his immediate family. Mom signed the consent form for the surgery. He requested to see Wan Ling and Yuan Shao before the surgery, but Mom firmly denied it. He even tried to contact them by phone, but Mom had confiscated his mobile. He cursed and smashed everything in the hospital room. I held Mom's hand. "Since Dad feels this way, let them come." Mom was clueless about the whole situation. She just felt that the mother and son duo were repulsive. But seeing my insistence, she agreed. Wan Ling brought Yuan Shao to the hospital, and she burst into tears as she threw herself onto Dad's body. Coincidentally, the doctor came by for a round of checkups. I took the initiative to introduce Wan Ling and her son to them. Facing everyone's gaze, Wan Ling's pale, unremarkable face turned extremely awkward, especially since her son with Dad didn't seem much younger than me. Dad's expression was also quite awful. He had accumulated so much reputation over the years, and it seemed he had lost most of it during this period. With tears in my eyes, I pleaded with the doctor, "Even though what Dad has done is indefensible, I don't want him to die. Please, uncles and aunties, you must save him." Dad's face turned green. What a mess this had turned into. After the doctor left, Mom contacted some middle and senior level colleagues from Dad's company to visit him. As soon as they left, Wan Ling tried to leave with Yuan Shao, but Mom's female bodyguards, whom she had assigned to me, stopped them. "Since Dad wanted you to come see him, you might as well see enough." After the company people left, Dad's classmates came, elementary school, middle school, high school, university classmates. Mom contacted everyone she knew, and even those she didn't, making every effort to reach out to them. Wave after wave of visitors came, and Mom introduced them each time. Dad was stripped of his dignity so thoroughly, it was as if he was socially dead. Wan Ling wasn't faring much better, and her son Yuan Shao was even pulling a long face, hiding in the corner without speaking. Mom took a gentle sip from her thermos. "We still have some distant relatives back in our hometown. If you like, I can ask Wan Ling to bring the child over tomorrow." Dad weakly shooed Wan Ling and her son away. Eventually, Dad settled down. The wait for the surgery was long and agonizing. Perhaps Dad was bored, or perhaps he was delusional, but he grabbed my hand and earnestly said, "Yu, Xiao Xiao is your biological brother, Dad's only son, and the root of our old Yuan family. Can't you treat him well?" I frowned, having never realized how deeply he valued sons over daughters. I pulled out 2 teeth from my pocket, the ones he had knocked out earlier, and shook them in front of him. "Do you think that's possible?" Dad became furious and embarrassed. "Which parent doesn't discipline their child? I've been good enough to you. Look at our hometown. Which girl has a life as good as yours? Don't ignore your blessings." His words truly disgusted me. "Dad, I think you're shameless, relying on Grandpa's support to start a business, finding women while Mom was pregnant, having an illegitimate child who is only half a year younger than me. Now that you're close to death, you want to trick Mom into leaving everything to your illegitimate child. You say you've been good to me, but I haven't felt it at all. You pride yourself on being high class, but all you have are feudal leftovers clogging your brain, wanting to take all the good things from Mom for your son outside. I've never seen a more despicable old man than you. Someone like you probably goes straight to hell when they die." Dad's trembling fingers pointed at me. I slapped his hand down. "What did you teach me before? Pointing fingers at people is rude. You. He stuttered without end. I found his speech annoying and shoved an unpeeled apple into his mouth. "Shut up, scumbag. Still trying to brainwash me to treat your illegitimate child well. You're really too confident in yourself. If I didn't have the memories of my past life, I might have actually believed your nonsense." The day of the surgery finally arrived. He was wheeled into the operating room. Mom and I waited outside the operating room door. Maybe because I already knew his fate from my past life, I wasn't nervous at all. I even felt a hidden sense of anticipation. Wan Ling actually came with Yuan Shao. I stood up, and Yuan Shao instantly hid behind Wan Ling. I scoffed lightly. Coward. Mom glanced at Wan Ling expressionlessly and said nothing. Wan Ling approached with an awkward smile. Sister Chiwen, I came to see old Yuan. Mom treated her as if she were air, not sparing her an extra glance. From morning till afternoon, the lights in the operating room finally changed. A moment later, the doctors walked out of the operating room, the lead doctor looking very serious, his gaze towards me and Mom carrying a hint of pity. You should say whatever you need to say to him soon. Behind me, a scream shattered the air. I turned to see Wan Ling crouching on the ground, wailing loudly. Dad's surgery had failed, and he was pushed back into the ward. The doctor said he didn't have much time left and advised us to prepare for the end. Dad's face was deathly pale, a shadow of doom hanging over him. Upon seeing Wan Ling and Yuan Shao, a startling brightness burst from his eyes. Xiao Xiao. I slammed the caravan door shut. Still Xiao Xiao. Go back and wait for death. 12. After moving Dad back into his original room, Mom began to methodically arrange his affairs. Even in front of him, she decided how many wreaths were needed and what kind of urn to use. Whenever I remember the tragedy of Mom and me in my past life and see Dad's pitiful state of barely living, I feel gratified. Now, during the summer vacation, I have plenty of time to spend with Dad. I stayed by his bedside, chattering about household matters. Wan Ling and her son came again, but Mom chased them out. Do you know what kind of life she's leading now? In the housing estate you arranged, she's shunned by everyone, a veritable street rat. She even wants to move out, but too bad, Mom has frozen all the assets under your name, so she definitely can't use her supplementary card. Once your funeral is settled, Mom will be free to sue and reclaim every penny you spend on her. She'll have to cough up as much as she spent. Dad stared at me intently, his voice hoarse. Xiao Xiao, Xiao Xiao, even close to death. His thoughts were still with his illegitimate child. I couldn't help but sneer. Do you think you've settled everything by making a will? Whether your will has any legal effect is still uncertain. It's said that illegitimate children have inheritance rights, but who can prove that Yuan Shao is truly your biological child? You think you can rest easy just because you've done a paternity test in secret? Mom consulted a lawyer, and that test is worthless. Mom has even prearranged your funeral services, and without her and my permission, Wan Ling will have no chance to do a legal paternity test for Yuan Shao. Yuan Shao and Wan Ling won't get a penny of our money. Dad convulsed, shaking for a while before gradually calming down. His eyes were filled with hatred. If looks could kill, I would have died 1,000 times under his piercing gaze. What did we do wrong? It's just that we didn't want others to take what rightfully belongs to us. If Dad had any conscience in our past life and hadn't been so calculating towards Mom, we wouldn't have ended up so miserably. He is the true culprit for our downfall. I met his gaze. Just you wait and see. 13. Dad passed away that very midnight. These last moments, he didn't live easily. I think if I hadn't angered him, he might have lived a day or two longer. I admit it was intentional. I just didn't want him to leave this world comfortably. Why should he get off scot-free after all he did to hurt Mom and me? I just couldn't let him die peacefully. Still concerned about Wan Ling and her son, Mom methodically arranged his affairs. Returning from the crematorium, we were confronted by Wan Ling and her son, who had come seeking us. Knowing that Dad had died, Wan Ling and her son were devastated. I don't know how much of their grief was genuine, but without Dad to support them, surely some of it was sincere. Mom didn't stop them. They participated in Dad's funeral from start to finish. After my father's funeral was handled, the issue of his estate came next on the agenda. Wan Ling claimed that Yuan Shao was my father's biological son and should inherit the assets under my father's name. Unfortunately, her claims were unsupported by any evidence, and neither my mother nor I acknowledged them. With my father gone, reduced to ashes, it was impossible to verify Yuan Zhao's paternity through any means involving my father directly. Not only could she not lay claim to the so-called inheritance, but she was also expected to repay the money she had previously spent. My mother unapologetically submitted all the collected evidence. Every penny my father spent on her and her son was part of the communal property belonging to him and my mother, and Wan Ling was obligated to repay it. Firstly, there was the villa registered under Wan Ling's name, then the large bank transfers, and the luxury goods and jewelry my father had purchased for her. The evidence laid out one by one was too substantial for Wan Ling to simply dismiss as gifts. Confused and overwhelmed, Wan Ling sought guidance and incredibly, brought a family disputes TV show to confront my mother and me. She tearfully portrayed my mother as heartless in front of the cameras, accusing her of ruthlessly cutting off her and her son after my father's death. She naively thought to sway public opinion to force my mother and me into submission. Did she think everyone would sympathize with her warped view of morality? Exposing her most disgraceful side to the public like this was something I had never seen before. Gaining sympathy is easy, especially since my mother and I were the actual victims here. My mother, holding back tears, recounted her struggles while talking to the mediator. Elle is only half a year older than that child, and they've been deceiving us right under my nose. I never left the factory even during my maternity leave. When we were just starting, there was so much to handle. Finance, procurement, customer service, vehicle logistics. I was behind all of it. The day I got out of confinement, I rode an electric scooter to handle tax matters, and when I returned, caught in a heavy downpour, I waited under a bridge with my child until dark to save on taxi fare. Starting a business was incredibly hard, and these were real experiences my mother had gone through. By the end, she was visibly emotional. Wan Ling only saw my mother's success and was blind to her sacrifices. While my mother ran around for the factory, my father found time to engage in affairs. How could one not be furious? My mother was merely protecting her legal assets, completely justified. Wan Ling then changed her story, claiming she was also deceived by my father, as she had not known he was already married. Considering my father was already in his 30s and somewhat established when I was born, and not always around. How could she assume he was single? Everyone knew better. Such excuses might fool a child, but no one else. Her denial looked incredibly weak under the scrutiny of the camera. She begged my mother, for my father's sake, not to be so merciless towards her and her son. We were already so wealthy. She wasn't asking for Yuan Shao to inherit anything significant, just for my mother to spare them a little, which wouldn't affect us at all. She spoke eloquently, appearing very pitiful, unfortunately for her. The decision lay with my mother, not the mediators or the cameraman. After recounting past events, my mother then presented evidence of the expenses my father had incurred for Wan Ling right in front of the camera. $1 million villa gifted away, luxury cars worth tens of millions replaced one after another, and the tens of millions spent on her over the years. Even Yuan Zhao's elite school fees were dozens of times more expensive than my primary school fees. Their lifestyle was far more lavish than anything my mother and I had indulged in. When this mediation session was broadcast, it did nothing to help Wan Ling's case. In fact, it attracted a barrage of criticism toward her. Gossip seekers even dug up Wan Ling's social media accounts. Almost every post showcased her lavish lifestyle, flaunting her mansion, luxury cars, and jewelry. When upset, she'd shop at high-end stores or spontaneously travel, one day flying to Tokyo for sashimi, the next to London to feed pigeons. She portrayed herself as a pampered lady of leisure who lacked nothing. Her show of wealth did attract tens of thousands of followers on her platform, many of whom commented on how they envied her lifestyle. The stark contrast between her public persona and her actual situation drew severe backlash, attracting countless insults from netizens on her social media accounts, perhaps unable to withstand the attacks from netizens. Wan Ling quickly deleted all her posts and set her account to private. I only occasionally took time to follow their updates. Knowing that they were not doing well brought me comfort. After a lawsuit that lasted over half a year, she got back her villa and all the luxury cars, jewelry, and goods under her name. The money that had already been spent also had to be returned within a set time frame. My mother quickly sold off the villa at a low price. The buyer then evicted her and her son from the villa. Yuan Shao could no longer afford the tuition at his prestigious school. Not long after, he dropped out and transferred to a very ordinary private elementary school. Wan Ling has always relied on her father's financial support, as she neither works nor has any source of income herself. Accustomed to a lavish lifestyle, the money she has is never enough. This lifetime has seen her and her son become homeless, due to failing to repay the money on time. Wan Ling has been labeled as a person who has breached trust. Having lived a pampered life without any practical skills, she simply cannot support herself. During a cold winter, Wan Ling, dressed in thin clothes, brought Yuan Shao to her mother's home. Crying profusely, she begged her mother for forgiveness. Stepping forward, I offered Wan Ling a sum of money on the condition that she kneels before our mother. After hesitating, Wan Ling, pulling Yuan Shao along, knelt down before our mother. Our mother, not expecting her to actually kneel, quickly moved away. That's the difference between people, I suppose. No matter what, our mother would never stoop so low as to humiliate a woman outright. I took a card out of my pocket and threw it to Wan Ling, saying, "There's 50,000 yuan in here. Go change Yuan Zhao's surname. In the past, 50,000 yuan would have been nothing to her, but times have changed, and now this amount of money is significant. She changed Yuan Zhao's registration and sent us a photo. I deliberately took the photo to our father's grave to show him. I'm not sure if he could see it, but if he could, it would probably infuriate him again. Before he died, he still schemed against my mother and me for his son. Now, a mere 50,000 yuan made Wanling change her son's surname without hesitation. I also persuaded my mother to change her surname. It was a way to completely sever ties with our father and our past life. Later on, my mother mentioned she had seen Wanling a few times at social gatherings. She still maintained her delicate, demure facade, constantly changing partners as she aged. She eventually set up a small stall to support herself. As for Yuan Xiao, having grown up engaging in petty theft, he couldn't shake off those bad habits and had been in and out of trouble due to stealing. At 18, he crossed the wrong people and ended up severely disabled, losing a hand and his sight, which rendered him completely helpless. My mother and I did not pursue their total ruin, but their lives turned out to be rather dismal. The entire story ends with the revelation of a secret child my father had hidden for 8 years, which my mother eventually discovered. She was determined to disassociate completely from him, even if it meant leaving with nothing. This time, I stopped her. Because I had been reborn, Dad was dying of a terminal illness. Once he passed away, all his assets would belong to my mother and me. Yeah, if your parents were to separate, would you want to stay with Mom? My mother asked me again, and this time, I didn't hesitate. I firmly told her, Mom, don't get a divorce. Tears welled up in her eyes. Did you know that child your father had with another woman is only half a year younger than you? How could Mom swallow such humiliation? If we divorce, out of sight, out of mind, would you stay with Mom? You're all I have left. Mom, no, I replied. Why? She asked. Because I have been reborn. In my past life, after my parents divorced, my mom left with nothing just to fight for my custody, losing all the assets she and my father had earned together. Just 2 months after the divorce, my father died of late-stage stomach cancer. He revealed the existence of the mother and child duo only because he was dying. He wanted to pave the way for his illegitimate child but couldn't bear to let my mother take half of his wealth. He insisted on having my custody, and to take me with her. My mom had to give up all the property they had worked for together. She had just received the divorce papers when he married his mistress. After his death, the story continued. The woman who broke up our family legally inherited all of his wealth. My mother and I were ruthlessly ousted by this third party. No matter whether my mother tried to start a business or find work, their interference thwarted her every attempt. They even went so far as to target her when she tried to sell goods at a street stall, hiring thugs to harass her. To support me, my mother was forced into a life of entertaining men at bars, and eventually, she fell into prostitution. This third party tormented my mother for 10 years, and on my 18th birthday, my mother jumped from the 21st floor of a building. Even after her death, they didn't leave me alone. They paid people to bully me at school, twisting the truth to label me as an illegitimate child and painting my mother as the homewrecker. Without any family, I was alone and vulnerable, and one foggy night, I was hit and killed by a speeding truck. The wealth used to persecute me and my mother came from the inheritance that the third party received from my father. In this life, I am determined to protect my mother and not let that despicable man succeed. Mom, do you believe in dreams? I shared with my mother everything that had happened. Murmuring to herself, she said, Mom would never degrade herself to do such demeaning things, nor would she ever abandon you. I know, but when pushed to the brink, who can guarantee they wouldn't grasp at the only lifeline available? Even if that lifeline is filthy, sometimes you have to hold your nose and grab it. Because of the betrayal and deceit from Dad, Mom became disheartened and neglected the company. Dad took this opportunity to pretend to reconcile with Mom, misleading her to believe he still cared for her. Meanwhile, he took control of the company while she wasn't paying attention. Mom was skeptical, but her love for me was deep-seated. Even if it was just a dream, she was determined to seek the truth. Mom went back to the company. That evening, she returned home with Dad, who looked visibly upset. I approached him. Dad, are you a dirty cucumber? He was so angry, he couldn't catch his breath for a while. Online, they say a man who cheats is like a dirty cucumber. No matter how much you liked it, it's no longer usable. Mom quickly covered my mouth. Spend less time online. Don't talk nonsense and stop learning such vulgar things. I nodded hastily. After Mom let go, I asked, Mom, Dad, are you still going to get a divorce? Mom smiled. Of course not. Mom has forgiven Dad, and we will be fine as a family of 3. Dad's face turned a mix of green and purple. He scolded me briefly, and without eating dinner, He went back to his room, mom's phone beeped, and she went to take a shower. I skillfully unlocked her phone. Wan Ling, the other woman, was provoking mom again, sending her passionate photos of herself and dad. Her words were taunting, urging mom to hurry up and divorce dad. She insulted mom by calling her a barren hen, mocking her for not being as uninhibited as herself, failing to win dad's affection. She also claimed that she and dad were the true love, that if it hadn't been for my grandfather forcing dad to marry mom, they would have been a legitimate family. I replied for mom, I don't believe it, your photo must be photoshopped. I remember Uncle Yuan has a big mole on the left side of his buttocks. But it's not in your photo. Wan Ling actually sent a steamy video in response. To provoke mom, it was shot in 360-degree high definition, clearly showing dad's mole on his left buttock. It was disgusting. I held back my nausea, downloaded the original images and videos, and sent them from mom's account to mine. After dinner, I opened my laptop to import the videos and photos. I heavily pixelated the critical parts involving dad and Wan Ling, and posted it to my social circle. The caption read, Auntie says she's very skilled, unlike mom who isn't as uninhibited. Dad now despises mom and wants to divorce her. What should I do? Yaya doesn't want to be a child without a father. Crying loudly, I'm not even 9 years old yet. Sending such nasty stuff shouldn't land me in jail. Right, dad is playing the emotional card with mom while Wan Ling is provoking mom, hoping she'll divorce soon. They're both quite calculating. I knew dad would be angry, but I didn't expect him to explode like this. He slapped me across the face, and I lost 2 teeth. Oh God, it hurt so much, but compared to the excruciating pain of being run over by a truck, this slap felt like a light drizzle. Mom lunged at him and scratched his face, leaving it a bloody mess. It was quite a sight. He ordered me to delete the video, and I obediently did so, but deleting it was pointless. Who knows how many people saved that video overnight. Among my contacts, there are several aunts who are always eager to gossip. And I trust their determination won't disappoint dad. Dad cursed mom. Look at the fine daughter you've raised. He stormed out, slamming the door. My mouth was full of blood, and mom, crying, wanted to take me to the hospital. I refused. Mom, when in trouble, we should go to the police. Despite her concern for me, mom was persuaded to take me to the police station instead, bleeding all the way there. I finally vomited as soon as we arrived at the station, with my mouth bloody. I shakily extended my hand to a kind policewoman, holding the 2 teeth I had kept. Auntie, Yaya wants to report a crime. It must have been dad's first time in a police station, especially for assaulting his own daughter. After years of smooth sailing, this was a new low for him. His face was a mix of green and purple, utterly humiliated. The policewoman said my injuries were severe enough for a public security punishment. If mom and I insisted, dad could be detained for 5 days or fined. I was more than willing to have dad locked up, giving mom 5 more days. Dad accused me of sharing his private video. I quickly pulled up the video of Wan Ling and dad on my child's phone, turning up the brightness for everyone to see. Dad said this video shows auntie saying she's good at what she does, even having a son for dad, and urging mom to divorce him soon. Although dad is no good, Yaya doesn't want them to divorce. Yaya doesn't want to be without a dad. Yaya just wanted to get advice from family friends online. I burst into tears, my swollen cheeks drenched with them. If there was a hole in the ground, dad would surely have dived right in. After an awkward moment, the officers kindly explained to me that sharing such material online was illegal. However, since I was young and had deleted it promptly, they just gave me a verbal warning. Now everyone knew about dad's betrayal, and their disdain for him deepened. Due to our persistence and the evidence, dad had no choice but to face 5 days behind bars. With 2 lost teeth, I bought mom 5 days of time, which felt like a good deal to me. Now wasn't the time to feel sorry for myself. After seeing the doctor, I urged mom to go to her company. I also told her that several key positions at the company were held by Wan Ling's relatives. Mom, not wanting to delay, quickly arranged for 2 robust female bodyguards to look after me and rushed off to handle things at work. Dad is what you might call a phoenix man online, from a poor family background, raised by a struggling widowed mother who sacrificed a lot for his education, while mom's family wasn't particularly wealthy either. Luckily, my grandfather's workplace had once awarded him a house in the city. The location is quite good. After my parents graduated and got married, my grandfather sold his house to give them some startup capital. With that money, they turned a small workshop run by just the 2 of them into a factory now valued at nearly 1 billion. Although my mom is very smart and handles company matters efficiently and orderly, she is very emotional. In her previous life, my dad played on her emotions, persuading her to leave everything behind. Mom thought she could start over, But the world is ever-changing, with me as her burden. And Wanling chasing after her relentlessly. It's not just about starting a business. It's hard even just to support the two of us. It seems like children are always the weak spot for most mothers. If not for me, why would mom willingly give up the results of her years of hard work? I don't want to repeat the tragedies of my past life. This life. It's my turn to protect my mom. It's been 5 days since he went in. Dad must be filled with hatred towards mom and me, after coming out. He didn't even come home but went straight to live in the love nest he built for Wanling and her son. Because of the video incident, Dad became the laughingstock of the company. Mom said that on the first day Dad went back to work, it was like a chimpanzee entering a crowd, quietly stared and whispered about by everyone. Some cynical aunts secretly cursed him behind his back and rolled their eyes at him, fresh out of jail and facing such treatment. He lost his temper at work and almost kicked those people out of the company. Of course, Mom stopped him from doing that. Knowing that Mom had kicked out Wanling's relatives from the company, Dad had a huge fight with her. Their relationship completely deteriorated, and Dad knew he could no longer manipulate Mom emotionally to get his way. He offered to split his assets with Mom and have a peaceful divorce. Mom learned from Dad's personal doctor about his illness, that even with successful surgery, he didn't have much time left, which made it even less likely for her to agree. All these facts supported what Mom and I discussed. She would never trust Dad again. Dad also knew he didn't have much time left. He was just dragging things out with us, something he couldn't afford to do, but Mom didn't agree to an amicable separation, so he filed for divorce in court. Holding my hand, Mom tearfully told the court staff, although he was at fault first, both my daughter and I are willing to forgive him. We have such a good relationship. We shouldn't give up on our marriage just because he strayed. I also cried, saying, Daddy, you doesn't want to let you go. Dad looked very frustrated. He couldn't provide evidence that his relationship with Mom was beyond repair. His affair with Wanling only proved he couldn't control his desires. But Mom and I were willing to forgive him. Mom, with her vast capacity for forgiveness, hoped he would return to the family. After a long struggle, his first divorce lawsuit ended in failure. If Dad wanted to divorce again, he would have to wait 6 months if Mom didn't agree. Unfortunately, he couldn't wait that long. Mom told me that Dad had secretly taken a lot of money from the company for Wanling and her son. He was afraid they wouldn't get anything after his death. He even made a will in secret, leaving his share of the assets to his illegitimate child. I was worried and asked Mom, why don't you stop Dad? Mom told me not to worry too much. She would handle things outside, and she would never let unrelated people take advantage of us. I told Mom everything I knew in detail. Dad couldn't deceive her anymore. I believe in Mom's ability not to be taken advantage of. In my past life, Mom and I had suffered too much. I'm not heartless. I don't want to give a single penny to that mother and son. Dad's actions really disheartened me. He never came home, so I had to go to the residence he arranged for Wanling and her son. I know where they live. He placed Wanling and her son in one of the top villa areas in our city. I had been here in my past life, too. At that time, I was seeking Wanling's help. I knelt at the gate of their villa, pleading for her to be magnanimous and spare my mother and me. Unfortunately, she kicked me down and stepped on my face with her high-heeled shoe. Laughing radiantly, she said, "This is karma, all because your mother shamelessly interfered in our love." The sharp heel of her shoe painfully pressed into my face, and some onlookers, spurred by her words, spat at me and cursed me for being shameless. She told me she would forgive my mother if I knelt before her, and I did kneel. Her laughter grew even louder. She held her son by her side, both shaking with amusement. The innocent, bland face of her son nearly made me sick. Now it's my turn to collect some interest. I took my female bodyguard, carrying a photo of her and my father, and asked from the entrance all the way to their villa. Their door was wide open. The woman who once flaunted her power in front of my mother and me was watering the garden with her son. Everything seemed peacefully timeless. Auntie Wanling. Wanling was stunned at first sight of me, and seeing the crowd of gossiping women behind me. Panic spread across her face. TSK. I always wondered why her husband was hardly ever home. She had the nerve to tell me he was busy flying around because he's an important company executive. Turns out she's just a shameless mistress. One woman said, "She looks so gentle on the surface. Who would have thought she was like this behind closed doors?" It's really eye-opening. Appearances are deceiving. Who knows whether she's a person or a ghost behind that facade? People with such poor character, we didn't know before. But let's avoid her from now on to protect our children. Their comments snapped Wanling back to reality. She pretended not to recognize me and repeatedly said I had the wrong person, lying through her teeth. But no one believed her since I had shown everyone the photo. The harsh words of these women grew louder, and in her embarrassment and anger, she shouted at us to leave immediately. I wiped away my tears and began to plead with her. Auntie Wanling, please don't let my dad divorce my mom. Okay, if you leave my dad, I can give you as much money as you want. You like dad's money, right? I even have a lot of New Year's money. With a crash, I smashed the piggy bank I was holding, scattering 1 and 5 jiao coins everywhere. I picked them up one by one, placing a handful in her hands. The disdain from the surrounding crowd grew louder. Her son Yuan Shao rushed at me to hit me, but I grabbed his ear, causing him pain. Wanling tried to help, but my bodyguards held her back. I cried and cursed, scratching and pinching as I lost control in my fury, brutally clinging to Yuan Shao and beating him. It's all your fault my dad left us. You took my dad away. It's all your fault. As a girl who developed early, I was much stronger than the shorter Yuan Shao, who was no match for my attacks. He wasn't my brother. He was a devil, born with original sin. He and his shameless mother took everything from my mother and me and then insanely retaliated against us. To improve Wanling's image, the increasingly sensible Yuan Shao spent money to spread rumors at my school, claiming my mom broke up their family, leading to my dad's death. He even encouraged girls to lock me in the bathroom, tear up my textbooks and homework, frame me for cheating on exams, and had people throw slop on me on my way home. He was rotten from the start, and I wouldn't let him off just because he was still a child. When my father arrived, Yuan Shao was already bruised and disheveled. Wanling, holding her son, cried pitifully while my father raised his hand to hit me. My bodyguards shielded me, watching my father warily, ready to restrain him if he struck. Peeking through the gap between them, I straightened my neck at my father. If you want to end up in jail again, go ahead, hit me, come on, kill me. You knocked out 2 of my teeth last time. You want to hit me again, don't you? I was just trying to protect our family. What did I do wrong? How could you shamelessly flirt with others? I must have been incredibly unlucky to end up with a father like you. There were too many onlookers, forming a tight circle around us. They were all talking at once, berating Wanling and my father for being shameless. Now, they pointed fingers and whispered about my father and Wanling. My words enraged him so much that he clutched his chest, swayed, and finally collapsed in the garden. I never expected my father to be so intolerant of stress that he would faint like that. Immediately, I cried out as I called for an ambulance. When the ambulance arrived, Wanling tried to bring her bruised son with us to the hospital, but I forcefully pushed her away. My father's anger led to a series of adverse reactions. His cancer cells had spread even more severely. The doctor said that without immediate surgery, he might not survive the month if he underwent surgery right away. There was a 30% chance of success, even if successful. At most, he could live only another year or so. When my father woke up and saw me, he tried to scold me but was sharply slapped by my mother. Since you're already bedridden, just stay calm, she said. My father was furious. But he was too weak to walk a few steps without gasping for air. No match for my mother. I held him down on the bed and relayed the doctor's words to him, asking for his opinion. I don't know if he had undergone surgery in a past life, but regardless, he died not long after. My father looked defeated. It was clear he was very upset. But what did that have to do with my mother and me? Whatever he chose, death was inevitable. He eventually opted for the surgery. I wasn't surprised. For someone as afraid of dying as he was, he wouldn't pass up even the slightest chance at life. My grandmother died early, and now he only had my mother and me as his immediate family. My mother signed the surgery consent form. He requested to see Wanling and Yuan Shao before the surgery, but my mother flatly refused. He also tried to contact them by phone, but unfortunately, my mother had confiscated his mobile. He cursed and smashed everything in the hospital room. I grabbed my mother's hand. Since Dad wishes to see them, let them come. My mother was confused. She found the mother and son repulsive, but seeing my insistence, she agreed. Wanling brought Yuan Shao to the hospital, throwing herself on my father and sobbing heavily. Coincidentally, the doctor came in for rounds just then. I took the initiative to introduce Wanling and her son, facing everyone's stares. Wanling's pale and awkward face turned extremely embarrassed. Especially since her son with my father didn't look much younger than me. My father also looked terrible. He had built up his dignity over many years, and it had almost completely eroded away during this time. With tears in my eyes, I pleaded with the doctor. Although what Dad did was inexcusable, I don't want him to die. Please save him, doctors. My father turned pale. This was a complete mess. After the doctor left, my mother contacted some mid to high level executives from the company to visit my father. Wanling tried to leave with Yuan Shao but was stopped by the female bodyguards my mother had arranged. since Dad wanted you to see him, then have a good look, my mother said. Once the company people left, more visitors came, including Dad's classmates from various stages of his life. My mother, whether she knew them or not, tried to contact everyone. Group after group visited. And each time my mother introduced them thoughtfully, my father was stripped of his dignity. This was social death if there ever was such a thing. Wanling didn't fare much better, and her son Yuan Shao just sulked in a corner, silent. My mother sipped quietly from her thermos. We still have some distant relatives back in our hometown. If you like, I can invite them too. Tomorrow you can also ask Wanling to bring the child over. Dad feebly sent Wanling and her son away. Dad finally calmed down. The wait for the surgery was long and torturous. Perhaps Dad was bored, or perhaps he was being fanciful, but he grasped my hand and pleaded earnestly, yeah, Xiao Xiao is your biological brother, and Dad's only son. He is the root of our Yuan family. Can't you treat him well? I frowned, not realizing until then how deeply ingrained his preference for sons over daughters was. I pulled out 2 teeth from my pocket that he had knocked out earlier, shook them in front of him, and asked, "Do you think that's possible?" Dad, furious and embarrassed, retorted, "Which parents don't discipline their children? I have already been very good to you. Look at our hometown. Which girl has a life as good as yours? Don't be ungrateful for the blessings you have." His words truly disgusted me. Dad, I think you're shameless, relying on Grandpa's support to start a business, fooling around with other women while Mom was pregnant, and your illegitimate child is only half a year younger than me. Now that you're dying, you're trying to trick Mom into leaving everything for your illegitimate child. You say you've been good to me, but I haven't felt it at all. You pride yourself on being high quality and high class, but your mind is full of feudal remnants and petty thoughts, wanting to take all the good things from Mom for your son outside. I've never seen an older man more despicable than you. Someone like you probably deserves to go to hell. Dad's hand trembled as he pointed at me. I slapped his hand away. What did you teach me before? Pointing fingers at others shows no class. You. He stuttered without finishing. I was tired of his stuttering and stuffed an unpeeled apple into his mouth. Shut up, scoundrel. He still wanted to brainwash me into treating his illegitimate son well. He really was overly confident in himself. If I didn't have the memories of my past life, I might have actually believed his nonsense. Finally, the day of the surgery arrived. He was wheeled into the operating room. Mom and I waited outside the operating room. Maybe because I already knew his fate from my past life, I wasn't nervous at all. I even felt a secret sense of anticipation. Unexpectedly, Wanling also came with Yuan Shao. I stood up, and Yuan Shao quickly hid behind Wanling. I scoffed lightly. Coward. Mom glanced at Wanling expressionlessly and didn't say a word. Wanling smiled awkwardly as she approached. Sister Chiwen, I came to see old Yuan. Mom treated her like air, not sparing her another glance. From morning until afternoon, the light outside the operating room finally changed. Shortly after, the doctors walked out, the leading doctor's face very serious, his eyes filled with pity as he looked at my mom and me. Say whatever you need to say to him soon. A wail erupted behind me. Turning around, I saw Wanling squatting on the ground, crying loudly. Dad's surgery had failed, and he was wheeled back to his room. The doctors said he didn't have much time left and advised us to prepare for the end. Dad's face was deathly pale, a shadow of death hanging over him. Seeing Wanling and Yuan Shao, a surprising brightness flashed in his eyes. Xiao Xiao. I slammed the hospital room door shut. Still Xiao Xiao. Just wait for death. We moved Dad back to his original room, and Mom began methodically arranging his final affairs, even in his presence. She decided on the number of wreaths needed and the type of urn to use. Every time I remembered the tragedy of Mom and me in my last life, seeing Dad now in such a wretched state brought me relief. Now during the summer break, I had plenty of time to spend with Dad. I stayed by his hospital bed, chattering about home matters. Wanling and her son came again, but Mom sent them away. Do you know what kind of life she's leading now? In that neighborhood you arranged for her, she's shunned by everyone. Like a street rat, she wanted to move out, but unfortunately, her mother had frozen all the assets in your name, so her supplementary card was definitely unusable. Once the funeral arrangements for you are settled and Mother has some free time, she plans to sue to recover every penny you spend on her. Whatever she has spent, Mother will make sure she pays it all back. Dad stared at me intently, his voice hoarse. Xiao Xiao, Xiao Xiao. On the brink of death, he still thought about his illegitimate child outside. I couldn't help but scoff. Do you think everything is settled just because you made a will? It's not even certain whether your will is legally valid. Everyone says an illegitimate child has the right to inherit, but who can prove that Yuan Shao is your biological child? Do you think you can rest easy just because you did a paternity test in secret? Mom consulted a lawyer, and that test you did is worthless. Mom has already arranged everything for your funeral, and without her and my permission, Wan Ling will have no chance to do a legal paternity test for Yuan Shao. Yuan Shao and Wan Ling won't get a dime from us." Dad's whole body convulsed and shook for a while before he gradually calmed down. His eyes were filled with hatred. "If looks could kill, I would have died thousands of times under his piercing gaze. What did we do wrong? We just didn't want someone else to take what rightfully belongs to us. If only Dad had a bit of conscience in his previous life and hadn't been so scheming towards Mom, we wouldn't have ended up so miserably. He is the real culprit for our plight." I met his gaze. "Just wait and see. Dad passed away that very midnight. He did not live an easy life in his final days. I think if I hadn't upset him, he might have lived a day or two longer. I admit, I did it intentionally. I didn't want him to pass away comfortably. Why should he get away scot-free after all he did to hurt Mom and me? I just wouldn't let him have his way. I wanted him to be unable to let go of Wan Ling and her son even in death." Mom methodically arranged his funeral. After returning from the crematorium, we were approached by Wan Ling and her son. Knowing that Dad had passed away, Wan Ling and her son were devastated. I'm not sure how much of their grief was genuine, but without Dad to support them, there must be some sincerity. Mom didn't stop them. They participated in Dad's funeral from start to finish. Once Dad's affairs were settled, the issue of inheritance came up. Wan Ling claimed that Yuan Shao was Dad's biological son and entitled to inherit his assets. Unfortunately, without proof, her claims were baseless, and Mom and I didn't acknowledge them. Dad was already ash. It wasn't possible to dig up his urn for a paternity test with Yuan Shao. Not only could she not get the so-called inheritance, but she also had to return the money previously spent on them. Mom unapologetically submitted the evidence she had collected. Every penny Dad spent on them was part of the joint property he shared with Mom, and Wan Ling was obligated to return that money, starting with the villa in Wan Ling's name, followed by large bank transfers, the gold and luxury items Dad bought for her. The evidence was laid out one by one, and it wasn't something Wan Ling could simply deny as a voluntary gift. Confused and overwhelmed, Wan Ling sought guidance and, unbelievably, brought a family mediation TV program to confront Mom and me. She tearfully portrayed Mom as heartless on camera, accusing her of ruthlessly pursuing them after Dad's death. She naively thought she could sway public opinion to pressure Mom and me into submission. Did she think everyone was as morally twisted as her to sympathize with her? Exposing her most disgraceful side to the public, she was the first person I had ever seen do something like this. Who doesn't know how to garner sympathy, especially since Mom and I were the actual victims? Mom, holding back tears, told the mediator about her struggles. Yaya is only half a year older than that child. They'd been under my watch for so many years. I never left the factory even during my confinement. In the early days, there was so much to handle: finances, procurement, customer service, vehicle scheduling. I was behind it all. On the first day out of confinement, I rode an electric scooter to deal with taxes, and on the way back, I got caught in a heavy rain. To save a bit of taxi money, I waited with my child under a bridge until it was dark. Starting a business was incredibly hard, and these were all true experiences of Mom. As she spoke, her eyes also welled up with tears. Mom had poured her heart and soul into building her success. Wan Ling only saw her mother's public successes but failed to see the sacrifices she made behind the scenes. While her mother was tirelessly working for their factory, her father managed to find time to engage in affairs. It's hard not to feel outraged by this. Her mother was merely protecting her lawful property, which was perfectly reasonable. Wan Ling later claimed she too was deceived by her father, having had no idea he was already married, considering he started his business in his 30s. Was somewhat successful, good-looking, and often absent. Why would she assume he was single? Everyone knew better. Such excuses might fool children but not adults. Her denials appeared extremely weak on camera. She pleaded with her mother to consider her father's role in their lives and not to be so merciless towards her and her son. We were already so wealthy. She didn't ask for her son Yuan Shao to inherit her father's wealth. Just a small share from her mother, which would hardly impact us. She spoke eloquently, making herself sound very pitiful. Unfortunately, the decision was up to her mother, not the mediators or photographers. After discussing the past, her mother then presented evidence of the money her father had spent on Wan Ling before his death. Millions on a villa handed over as a gift, luxury cars worth tens to hundreds of thousands replaced one after another, and tens of millions spent on her altogether. Even Yuan Zhao's elite school fees were dozens of times more expensive than my elementary school. Their life was far more indulgent than mine and my mother's. This mediation show had no effect on Wan Ling. In fact, it brought her a barrage of criticism. Gossip mongers even tracked down her social media accounts. Each post showcased her lavish lifestyle, flaunting mansions, luxury cars, and jewelry. She shopped at high-end stores whenever she felt down and took spontaneous trips, flying to Tokyo for sashimi one day and feeding pigeons in London the next. Her online persona was that of a pampered lady who had everything. Her flaunting gained her thousands of followers, many of whom envied her lifestyle. The stark contrast in her public image attracted endless criticism, and numerous netizens flooded her account with derogatory comments, perhaps unable to withstand the online backlash. Wanling soon deleted all her posts and set her account to private. I only checked in on them occasionally, feeling pleased to know they were not doing well. After a prolonged court case lasting over 6 months, she had to return the villa, all luxury vehicles, jewelry, and other luxury goods. The money already spent had to be repaid within a specified time frame. My mother sold the villa at a reduced price. The buyers evicted them from the villa. Yuan Shao could no longer afford his elite school and soon had to transfer to an ordinary private elementary school. Wan Ling, who had always lived off her father's money, had no job or any other source of income. Used to a lavish lifestyle, the little money she had was hardly enough. They became homeless. Due to her failure to repay the borrowed money, Wan Ling was declared a defaulter, having lived a life of luxury without any practical skills. She was incapable of supporting herself. During a cold winter, Wan Ling, dressed thinly, came to our house with Yuan Shao, crying and begging for my mother's forgiveness. I stepped forward, bypassing my mother, and offered her money if she would kneel to my mother. Hesitating briefly, Wan Ling knelt down with Yuan Shao. My mother, taken aback by her actual kneeling, quickly avoided her. Such is the difference between people, no matter what. My mother wouldn't stoop to humiliating a woman without limits. I pulled out a card from my pocket and threw it to Wan Ling. There's 50,000 yuan in here. Go change Yuan Zhao's surname. Back then, 50,000 yuan would have been trivial to her, but times had changed, and now, that amount was a fortune to her. She changed Yuan Zhao's registration, took a photo, and sent it to us. I made a point to take the photo to my father's grave and burned it for him to see. Whether he could see it or not, if he could, it would probably shock him once again. Just before he died, he still manipulated the situation for his son at the expense of me and my mother. Now, with just 50,000 yuan, Wan Ling didn't hesitate to change her son's surname. I pleaded with my mother to change her surname as well. It was a final break from my father, a complete severance from our past life. Later on, my mother mentioned she had seen Wan Ling at several parties. She still maintained that subtle, delicate demeanor, constantly surrounded by different men. As she aged and lost her charm,